What's going on? Welcome in to ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. My name is Joe George, alongside my guy, Mr. 713 himself, Ruben.
What's going on?
How are you, brother?
I'm excited to be here, man. I felt the energy just driving up here. It's a buzz in the air, man.
Yeah, man. It's a great weekend to be in College Station. We are broadcasting live here in College Station at the Angry Elephant. Just a reminder as well, they do have locations in Magnolia and in Cypress as well. But we had to come out to be at least as close to the action as possible as Texas and Texas A&M. The rivalry returns tomorrow. And we are out here thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Vodka, Enchanted Rock, Texas Vodka as well. That's what I'm gonna go for some vodka today while we're out here.
Right. The pink lemonade one looks pretty good.
That's what I was thinking too. Like I like the cucumber. I might even try the blueberry. I've never tried blueberry vodka,
No,
so that might be on my list of things to try today. So we got a fun show. We got a ton of stuff going on today. Obviously, we're going to talk about the A&M and Texas game that's coming up tomorrow. We're going to be playing a couple interviews back throughout the show periodically. Steve McKinney and Selvin Young, both obviously A&M and Texas legends. We're on with John and Lance this week where we play those interviews. And then Andrew Monaco, the voice of the Aggies, and Craig Way, the voice of the Texas Longhorns. We're on with Jeremy Branham and Jermaine on Wednesday with the Killer Bees. So we'll play those out. And David Nuno, everyone knows David Nuno in Houston now of Texags. He will be here with us in person coming up at 3:30. So this game this weekend, man, it feels so good to have this game back. It just feels like this is something that was missing in college football. I thought it was the dumbest thing in the world that they didn't play, even though one was in the Big 12 and one was in the SEC. There's no reason not to play this game every single year. I know not everyone loves the fact that it's not on Saturday. First, we thought we were going to at least get it on Black Friday, not like how it used to be on Thanksgiving Day itself. But, the game's coming up tomorrow night here in College Station. It's going to be an incredible environment. The best sporting event I've ever been to in my life, Ruben,
really,
was the A&M Notre Dame game, week 1 this year. It was incredible.
12th man, Kyle Field.
Oh, my gosh, dude. It's nothing. I've honestly never experienced anything like that before. Like, just the environment, how loud it was. Like, from kickoff, like, it was incredible to be there. I cannot imagine how crazy it's going to be this weekend.
No, 100%. When I was reading up on this rivalry goes all the way back to, let me double check, like 1915. These two started playing against each other before tomorrow. I mean, the excitement is at an all-time high. You mentioned it's been 13 long years since these two teams have played each other, and no one wants to be little brother. And when we all saw this game at the beginning in the preseason, we circled it because we knew that the rivalry meant something. Now that the fact that this game does mean something, there are huge playoff implications. Dude, this is just where you need to be at for college football weekend. I am excited, dude.
Yeah. I mean, think about what's going to happen from this game. Like, the winner is going to go to the SEC championship game to play Georgia. Obviously, A&M's playoff hopes are totally dead if they don't win this game on Saturday. Now, Texas, I think, still has an outside shot to make the playoffs because of what happened last weekend with, Alabama and Ole Miss both losing their games. Like, it feels like Texas still has a shot to make the college football playoff as the 11 or 12 seed, but we'll see how everything plays out tomorrow. Like the Arizona State game is going to be important for this one. But it just like you said, man, like it helps so much. Is that like they're playing for something? Like they're not just playing for bragging rights. Yeah. They're playing to go to the SEC title game. Like it just adds so much more to it.
No, and 100%. And when you hear Aggies fans talk, they are saying that this might be one of the biggest Aggie games in a very long time. The fact that, with a first-year head coach, you could go to the SEC championship. I mean, that's exactly what you want to see from a program that is starting over. And then just think, you get the dub tomorrow. You look at the future of A&M football. How many recruits are watching tomorrow's game and thinking, who is going to run college football in Texas for the next upcoming years?
Yeah, you got to think that there's going to be a lot of kids on the sideline of this game on Saturday that are deciding between these two schools. And being the game in College Station, the winner of that game might also just start, collecting that bag of recruits.
It starts now.
Yeah, like we already know like how intense it can be. I'm curious like how many kids are left undecided right now. And of course, there's the transfer portal too. Like it's like you never know. Like some of these young kids, like I no hate on the kids that transfer. I'm glad they can freely. But if Texas wins this weekend, like what does that mean for A&M? Vice versa. Like if Arch Manning has to play tomorrow, like,
Ooh.
will people be, looking at Arch and saying like, hey, that could be my quarterback next year, or Marcel Reed the way he's been playing. So I'm just glad it's back, man. It just feels better now that it's back. That like this weekend we have Ohio State, Michigan, we have Notre Dame, USC, you have Alabama, Auburn, you have this game as well, A&M and Texas. Like it just feels right for college football to have this game back. It's just been 13 years is way too long for this game not to be happening.
No, 100%. And me, I'm young, right? I'm 27. I still don't kind of understand the magnitude of Texas versus A&M, and I feel like that's the same for a lot of ball watchers under 30. When I'm going on Twitter and X and TikTok, and I'm seeing all the hype videos, all the history breakdowns, I'm like, dude, this means something. And when you look at Texas, this is their first year in the SEC. And the fact that they're there too, they're potentially, one game away from going to the SEC championship. The magnitude is at an all-time high. As we drove in, I see the big A&M flag, outside. It's goosebumps, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, it is exciting. Like, and like we're talking about here, like I'm glad because this game's always going to matter. Like that's one of the reasons why I love college football so much is that like tomorrow, Ohio State, Michigan obviously does not have the same feel this year that it did last year because Michigan's not good. Like they're not good, but it doesn't matter to them. Like it doesn't matter. I'm a Notre Dame fan like through and through. USC does not care that they're not good this year. They beat Notre Dame, even though we're not in the same conference. Like it just means more, and it's just what the pageantry of college football what I love. Because like Paul and I have been talking about, leading into the Cowboys game, leading into the Titans game, about like the Texans. Like it just doesn't have that same juice, right? Like
we're young, man.
I know, but like the Cowboys and Texans have only played 7 times now. It's 4-3 is the record. Like. Even if they, just because they're not in the same conference, like it just doesn't have the same, feel to it. Same with Titans and Texans, maybe a little bit. I mean, you got an owner crying after a game and getting a belt buckle. That brings a little bit of juice to it, but just not in the same way.
Just a tad bit, no, I 100% agree. Growing up as solely someone who watches the NFL product, right? I look forward to every 4 years against the Dallas Cowboys, and I look forward to the divisional games. But seeing the atmosphere right now, I mean, it's barely 3 o'clock, and I'm ready for game time. So it's like, yeah, I would love more, rivalries between this Houston Texans team and whoever they want to get with some beef with, right? Of course, this game on Sunday definitely, definitely stung. You took one on the chin. A lot of trash talking in the off season, but here we are.
I don't know if you've seen this, Ruben. I'm looking at one of the apps right now, one of the ticket apps.
Okay.
Have you seen the lowest tickets? Section 420, row 36.
Let me go $800.
Pretty close.
Really?
$629.
Oh my
is
gosh.
the cheapest ticket to get into the game.
That's high up.
That's high up. It is the most expensive game we've seen on average per ticket.
Is it worth it?
On these secondary markets? Honestly, like because I didn't go to the schools, either schools, like I would struggle to justify that. But like if this was, number 3 Notre Dame versus number 2 USC, like I would say yes.
Oh,
like
yeah.
if I was an Aggie, if I was, a Longhorn, and like it's like $600 to go to this game for the first game back, with the winner goes to the SEC title game. Because the thing is too, and that's what you can tell about this rivalry is like when these tickets started going up. And I remember like at first they were like $400, $450 to get in the stadium. So like you knew it was going to be expensive, but that's when we had a lot of questions about A&M, about like if they were going to make, be in position to make the college football playoff like they are now. And this the fact. So even like before, like to what we were just saying, like it just shows you like how much it matters because people are just they're ready. They're ready for this rivalry to be back on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean they're ready, and it's just crazy how one off season can change a program, and you could say the same for both Texas and A&M. And now we are here, and this is why, man, I'm kind of towards leaning to A&M. I love the story. I love sophomore quarterback Marcel Reed. I love first year head coach, and I just think when you coming into somewhere and you're able to almost get to you're almost to the SEC championship. You're one game away. I think it's just a great sign for your future, man. And I just can't stop saying enough how excited I am to be here. Like it's 3 o'clock and it's already halfway filled in this place here.
I know, it's crazy. Yeah, we are broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Reminder, they do have locations out in Magnolia and in Cypress as well. But we made the trek. Easy drive. Once we got past the Outlet Mall.
Yeah.
Once I got past the Outlet Mall, because of all the things I was factoring in for this drive today, because I was like, it's like 2 hours for me coming from League City, but like whatever. Like I do it all the time going to Lake Charles, and it's a long drive for me to work on a daily basis. As I was looking at it, I was like, no big deal. I'll get there by 2 o'clock. I'm in my car, and all of a sudden the time just starts going up. I'm like, what is happening?
No.
Like why am I getting slowed down so much? And then I get to the Outlet Malls, I'm like, oh, it's Black Friday. People still do that.
Yeah, I was surprised to see a lot of people out. There was a viral video of people fighting over 50-inch TVs, and I was like, hey, man, we're back. Black Friday is back. And, I remember when I was little going and trying to get the PSP over there in Target in Circuit City. But, no, I got caught between 4 AFC transportation buses. And when I tell you I was moving 15 miles an hour for like 30 minutes, I was frustrated. I was like, come on, man. Why is there traffic? I mean, I understand because of the game, but we were nowhere.
I know, but the game's tomorrow. We were not close enough to College Station for that traffic. So it's all Black Friday traffic. Well, if you're hanging out with us here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 as you do your early Christmas shopping, we appreciate it. Ruben, one of our finalists from Rock the Mic, host of the Twin Toros podcast that comes out every single Tuesday on the ESPN Houston YouTube channel and 713 Houston Sports on YouTube as well. We're putting out daily content. Talking all things Houston Texans. When we get back, we will talk some Houston Texans as well. He's Ruben. My name's Joe. Broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant. Thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
Welcome back into ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Joe and Ruben broadcasting live from inside the Angry Elephant in College Station, brought to you by our friends at Rebecca Creek Whiskey, or Rebecca Creek Distillery, Enchanted Rock Vodka, and Texas Ranger Whiskey. Here with you from 3 to 7, so we're going all 4 hours today. We're going to be grinding, hanging out here on YouTube, on Twitch as well, so you're more than welcome to join us and text in at 713-780-3776. So let's talk about the other game that's big for us this weekend. And we'll be talking Aggies and Longhorns throughout. We'll play some of those interviews throughout the show. But obviously there is a football game this weekend that the Houston Texans are going to be playing in. Ruben, they need a win. They need a win, I would say, desperately at this point. Losing last week to the Titans was brutal. The offense struggling again in the second half, unable to get anything going. What is it, over the last like 5 weeks or whatever it is now? The defense has 2 touchdowns. The offense has 1 touchdown. So they're really accomplishing nothing so far. Where are you at right now on your faith in the Texans?
The fan in me is always going to have some sort of faith, to be honest with you. But right now I'm disappointed. We did not expect these type of offensive struggles, and it seems like whenever halftime ends, when over quarter 3 and 4 are right here in front of us, this Houston Texan offense shut down. You're talking about not having an offensive touchdown in 6 games this year. We're averaging 6 points. I mean, that is just abysmal and it's laughable. And you notice that there was a timetable of all this, right? I noticed how around week 3 and 4, we started seeing CJ Stroud run for his life out there. The highest paid group in the NFL can't protect him. Week 7, you see him throw down his helmet right there. Hey, there's an issue. He's frustrated, and now we are seeing the effect of that. And our second-year quarterback having a sophomore slump. Man, I'm very disappointed and discouraged right now. However, I still know that there could potentially be maybe one thing this team could do to change it around. And of course, I believe in my head coach D'Amico, my quarterback CJ, regardless of the
Yeah,
flaws.
yeah. It's funny. It's talking about this game and where they're at and a sophomore slump. It's Do you view this as a sophomore slump, or do you think that they're taking more of a step backwards this year? Because CJ is obviously making the worst interceptions he's thrown as a
Yes.
Texan. Now, look, it's a small sample size,
Mhm.
but he didn't really do a lot of this at Ohio State. Like, he was not this inaccurate at Ohio State as he's been at times, and we know he might be seeing ghosts a little bit because of the bad offensive line. So I do think it's hard to figure out the difference between like a sophomore slump and just
Mhm.
overall regression of the team. What would you say about that?
I do think it's a little of both, and I think because your offense took a step back, it led up to the CJ Stroud struggling this season because the interceptions weren't there, in the first month of the season or in the second month. In the past 3 games, he's thrown 5 INTs.
Mm-hmm.
Given the fact that you had to move this offensive line around and still struggling with CJ, we are seeing him now have some happy feet in the pocket. We are seeing him now to overthrow, underthrow, the touches, passes that he was making last year, he's not making right now. And uh, very discouraging that we are here with this Houston Texan offense because you thought with a second-year quarterback, with a second-year offensive coordinator, they have some consistency together. And in year 2, it's let's shock the world with the crazy offseason.
Yeah, and they just haven't done it yet, and
Mhm.
and that's where like I'm with you. Like, I still have a little bit of faith that they're going to figure this thing out. Not much in Bobby Sloak, who we'll talk about more in the next segment, but just generally, like, the thing about the Texans right now is I feel like the flaws that we knew going into the season are just showing up big time. We knew what the secondary struggles would be,
Yeah.
with the deep ball. They struggled with it last year, and Lassiter and Derek Stingley Jr. have been elite level corners this year. They've been probably one of the top 3 or 4. I know if you look at Pro Football Focus, like their grades, they're the best graded out cornerback duo in the NFL. Kalen Bullock's been pretty good at times. Like, obviously, he's a ball hawk himself. And he's out there getting interceptions. It feels like every other game
Yeah.
for the Texans, or has really like 2 weeks ago that dropped interception like right there in his hands, like an
Right there.
opportunity to
Almost
get
almost goes back to the
yeah,
crib.
that would have been a pick six easy in that moment. But yeah, I think we're just seeing like a team that just is in a funk right now that they got to find their way out of it, and how you do that is always it's interesting because like we see coaches get fired and
Okay.
it works. We see like in Chicago it's worked, and obviously they made another big change today. They fired their head coach,
You
but
excited about that, huh?
oh yeah, I feel very good about that. I feel very very good about that. But like we saw last year, the change with Buffalo, it worked
Yeah.
out really well for them. We saw with Detroit when they fired their OC at the end of a season, and then they brought in Ben Johnson like the next year. Like he was a quarterback coach when they elevated him. They took off from there.
Mhm.
I don't know if we're going to get to that point. Honestly, I'm assuming at this point we won't see a coaching change for the Texan. But how do you think? What's the easiest way for them to get out of this?
I mean, I don't know why you don't make a change, right? Maybe don't take away complete OC duties from Bobby Slowick, but play calling wise, if you have a quarterback coach in Gerard Johnson, who you brought back, who was getting interviews from other teams to be offensive coordinator. If you think he could potentially be calling plays for you next year, why not get a head start? This offense right now is struggling. There's no life, right? It's hopeless.
Mhm.
And you still have some time, believe it or not. You have a bye week after Jacksonville. Then you have 3 games against Miami, Kansas City, Baltimore, all within 10 days. Joe, if we win any one of those games, we are feeling different about this team, different about this quarterback. And it's like, I don't want to go into this rough stretch knowing what I already have. And seeing the way this plays out, like, I hate to say it, when you hear same old Houston Texans, you see that right now happening. You're taking advantage of a weak division. You're taking advantage of the not so good teams. You're not beating the good ones. No one takes you serious. You get a home playoff win and you get bounced in week 2. That's how we all see this season being played out.
Yeah.
How you could potentially stop that. Just make a change, at play caller.
Yeah, and if they're not going to, so DJ Bieneme was on with Paul and I on Tuesday, and I asked him that question about Bobby Slowick, and he doesn't think they're going to. He doesn't think they're going to do it in the offseason. He thinks they're going to run it back for another year.
Now, that's not the first time I've heard someone say that.
It wouldn't shock me as much as, because the fans obviously always want change. The fans want to head on a spike, like they want to see people lose their jobs. Like I feel bad for those people that when they do. Because obviously they have families and things like that. But like from the football perspective, it's like, of course we want to see a change. Like we want to see it look different. And it feels like Bobby Slowick is a huge part of the reason why it's not working. However, they can still fix this themselves.
Yeah.
And because my argument always with like changing internally is, well, if that person has the answers, then why are they not helping give the answers now? Now, some situations are different. Like we know, just to use Chicago as an example, we know that Thomas Brown, who is now their head coach, but was just the interim OC for the last 2 weeks, we know that he was not involved directly with the offense. He was not really involved with the game plan. None of that stuff he was involved, which is stupid. It doesn't make any logical sense. But, he was not ever that guy for them. Now, going forward, so like Gerard Johnson, like how do you change it? Like, can you fit in? Can you just get the ball out quicker? I think it starts there.
Yeah,
I think they just need to start doing start getting some easy answers to the test for CJ. Let him get into a more comfortable rhythm in the game, specifically in the second half.
No, there's an acronym that we use in marketing. KISS, keep it short and simple. And that's what the Houston Texans offense needs to do for CJ Stroud. I feel like we forget he's in year 2. It feels like we're in year 5 of CJ Stroud being the quarterback of this team. But no, like this young kid is still barely allowed to drink a beer, and now he's in charge of having a franchise. Make it easy for him, and like you mentioned, getting the ball out quick. I love that, right? Those short throws to Nico Collins, those quick screens to Nico Collins. I like that. More screens involving Joe Mixon, who has been elite since being here. I do like that. Get your quarterback into a rhythm, because it feels like the offense you have, right? You have a big 50-yard bomb to Nico Collins, and then you run Joe Mixon to the left for -3 yards, killing your momentum, killing any type of, production that you had. And maybe something as simple as making a change at the play caller could do that. I don't know. Does it happen? Probably not. Could the offense still be the same thing? Absolutely. But it's the fact that you made a change. And I go back when you bench Kenyon Green against the Colts and you brought in Jared Patterson, boom, an immediate scoring drive. Following week against the New York Jets, a new left guard, Kendrick Green, and you had a 98-yard touchdown. You hadn't had that in years. So I've seen what a change could do. I look at the body language of CJ Stroud, man. After those interceptions, he's on the bench looking like he's about to cry. And I'm like, okay, right now we're hopeless. Could this change just spark something? I know I would feel some type of way if, like, I'm doing my daily duties and during the bye week I get a notification. Houston Texans are switching play calls. I'm like, oh, let's go.
Yep. The vibe would be so different, just in a good way. And you're right, Ruben. Like, it might not change anything. Like, nothing may change about what happens this weekend. I mean, or what happens going forward. So we'll get into that. We are broadcasting live from inside the Angry Elephant. Joe George, Ruben, here with you from 3 to 7. We're going to take a quick timeout. David Nuno of Texags will join us next. The rivalry is renewed and back tomorrow as Texas A&M faces off against the University of Texas at Kyle Field. All of our coverage this week, all of our interviews that you find on YouTube with guys like Craig Way and Andrew Monaco, Selvin Young, Steve McKinney are all available on YouTube, and you'll hear some of those today. We are here at the Angry Elephant in College Station, sponsored by Rebecca Creek Distillery. We'll be right back.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
Broadcasting live from inside the Angry Elephant. Just a reminder as well, they do have locations in Magnolia and in Cypress. We were out here in College Station, and we'll be back to the normal schedule, 12 to 3 with Paul Gallant on Monday. But right now, David Nuno of Texags joins me. What's up, man? How are you?
What's up, brother? How you been?
Good. I actually think this is one of the first times I feel like I've met you face to face.
I feel like I know you
I
because
know.
I've heard you for years. But
yeah, I know. Like when I was at the other place, we would have you on with the Adams a lot and things like that. But so game this weekend, what's the vibe like out here?
First off, it's potentially the biggest match between A&M and Texas in the history, which is weird, right, to say, because there's been some great matchups, outside of the bonfire game and obviously some that were before my time. There's been some great moments, but maybe the biggest ramifications for one program. Texas has been up and down the last 20 years. A&M has had only 2 good years, right? Texas has been up the last 2 years. So they're moving in the right direction. I think the Mike Elko era feels like it's moving in the right direction. A&M has not played good football the last month of the year. So if they can correct some of the defensive issues, it could be it's going to be an electric atmosphere anyway.
Yeah.
But A&M's biggest issue recently has been lack of tackling and slow starts. And against a team at the quality of Texas, you can't do that, even at Kyle Field.
I'll tell you, Kyle Field, I've been one time, and it was the most incredible environment I've ever been to in my life. And I was there when Jose Altuve hit the walk-off home run against the Yankees. I'm from Chicago, so I've seen, I was there in 2016 for a World Series game, but I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I was there for week 1. And my God, it was incredible at Kyle Field.
Which game was it?
The first game 1.
Oh, this year.
This year.
Notre Dame.
Yeah,
okay,
Notre Dame versus A&M this year. It was the most incredible environment I've ever been to.
That wasn't even the best of this year.
I'm sure. I can't imagine what tomorrow's going to be like.
Yeah, LSU was amazing.
Okay.
At LSU, the best atmospheres I've been to, at least in this incarnation of me living in College Station. This is my 3rd time to live here. Alabama. There was something in the air that day, like even before the game, 41-38 back in 2021. LSU this year, look, I'm not a big believer of A&M beat a very good LSU team at that time in the season.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Missouri, you can argue. I don't know if Missouri's ever been with their ranking, but I think A&M's victory over LSU set them down a different trajectory, right? Because at that point, when he talked about what Nussmeier was doing, he was being talked about as the best quarterback in the SEC, at least from a pocket perspective. That moment in time, to me, and also conversely, Texas, a lot of it is made about their schedule. And by the way, I do believe they've had an easy schedule. That's not to say they're not worthy of a top 5 ranking. I'm just saying, and by the way, I wish A&M's had an easy-ish schedule because all your hard games have been at home. So I recognize both things can be true. But again, just like if I could take a moment in time for LSU and a moment in time in Notre Dame and South Carolina in the loss, you could do the same thing for Texas, taking on a 3rd-string quarterback at Florida, right?
Mm-hmm.
A Yale transfer that nobody can remember his name right now. Kerry Washington, the lady from that TV show on ABC. I don't even remember the guy's name. You've got him. You've got, was it Michigan starting a walk-on?
Yeah, Michigan's not good this year, and they were not good in that game.
That
was kind of like the first moment we knew for sure,
right,
that Michigan was not going to be who they were. Yeah, I mean, Texas' schedule hasn't been hard.
And Michael Hawkins at Colorado, making his first start. Michael Van Buren at Mississippi State making his first start. So people get mad when the Aggie perspective says that. That's the reality. The other reality is they have an incredible offensive line, an incredible defensive line, probably the best wide receivers A&M's going to face. They are the best team A&M's going to face. All things can be true.
Do you think that, before we get back into this game, big picture with Texas, I'm curious because I think you lay out their schedule very fair. A&M wins this game on Saturday. Win or lose versus Georgia. What happens to Texas?
They're in the playoffs.
They're in the playoff team?
Yeah. They're in the playoffs. Look, are they one of the 12 best teams in the country regardless? Yes. Can you make an argument if they lose to A&M? I guess you could. I think it would be stupid to do so. Like, look, I like Texas to lose every game they play in.
Yeah.
But when I was a broadcaster at A&M, look, at Texags, I have a different role. I'm not there to be, like, when I was at ABC 13, I told the story as the story. And Texas is one of the best teams in the country. I think you can poke holes in their schedule, just like you can poke holes in Indiana's schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana, if they finish 11-1, in my opinion, in this current way the college football playoffs is set up, deserves to go. Even though I think the 5th best team in the SEC would beat Indiana.
That I agree with. Look, I'm a Notre Dame fan, like I said, but like you can argue Notre Dame doesn't really deserve to be in the college football playoff. They have 1 loss. They're going to have 3 top 25 wins this year. And no offense to Army and Navy, but 2 of them are against Army and Navy.
Right.
And one's against Connor. It's not against Marcel Reed. Like and Texas A&M is looking.
Don't get me started on Connor. That one hurts to talk about.
Really? You thought you were a big believer going into the
I was
season?
a big believer until the end.
Yeah.
Because I didn't mean to derail you.
No, you're fine.
And I can do a couple seconds if you want. The thing with Connor is he really was a different quarterback. The Connor we saw this year is not the same Connor.
I know. I got the hype. I got the, looking at way too early 2025 mock drafts and seeing Connor's name in there. It made sense.
Well, if you look at Connor's small sample size, right? He played phenomenal as a freshman against Ole Miss in his first start and almost won that game. He, coming into this year, had 19 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He moved well. He threw well. He had a swagger to him. In the Notre Dame game, he had 0 swagger, right?
None.
And, not playing in a year will do that to some quarterbacks.
Yeah.
New system that I don't think really fits what he does. And his mind took a hit. When you have been told you're the second coming, you're that class. You look at Quinn Ewers, Cade Klubnik, and Connor Wigman. Those three guys, all three were supposed to be fantastic. Quinn is the top of the three.
Mm-hmm.
Cade Klubnik's made a rebound. Connor's dropped. Quinn, you could argue, when he struggles, he really struggles, right?
Paul and I have been talking about this for weeks now, and our producer Sean is a UT grad, and I like UT. I have a buddy who's a really good friend of mine who played tackle for at Texas for a long time. Tristan Nicholson, who's a swing tackle there. So my first college games down here was at Texas, but I've been asking for Arch for months. It feels like at this point, just because I don't think he's not living up to the hype. And now the injury last week is interesting to see what he looks like this week, because I think that's going to be a big factor on Saturday. If he can't move, I'll be honest, I think they need to make a change. If he can't move in the pocket because it's this calf strain or whatever it is, it's really, really struggling against him. Because I just wonder if there's any, think back to Alabama with Jalen Hurts and Tua when Nick Saban made that move. If it's A&M is up by 3 points, but it's just been a defensive slugfest at halftime, is there any chance you make that change? I would make it, but I'm not Steve Sarkisian, obviously, so it's up to them. But big picture with not even just big picture, but this season, what do you think of Elko coming in, and then what do you think we've got since? Because it's been great so far.
So I don't want to say he was my 1A, but he was my 1 something, right?
Okay.
I don't know if I had a 1A because everybody was looking at Kalen DeBoer. If you can get Kalen DeBoer, you should consider it, right? I thought about Lane for maybe a minute, right? How do you not think about him? But I didn't think he fit our culture. I didn't think his personality would work here. And some of the things he said in the past kind of rubs Aggies the wrong way. So that wasn't going to work out. But Elko understands A&M. And what I love about Mike, regardless of if A&M loses this game or not, he is very reminiscent of an R.C. Slocum type of personality, right? I don't know if good old boy's a way to phrase it, but he gets his hands dirty. He puts his hands in the dirt.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, you can tell he fits the mold of what A&M wants to be,
right?
A lot more obviously,
or at least what we thought we were in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
In the early 90s. Look, Kevin Sumlin, I love Summy. Summy was great to me, and if it wasn't for John Granado, I don't think I would have a relationship with Summy. So props to JG. Summy was great, but that was a moment in time again, right? He fit 2012 with Johnny Manziel and the swag copter and all that. That he was great. But that's not what A&M has been historically, right? A&M historically has been a team that will beat you with a line of scrimmage. And during the Jimbo years, they just missed too much on that. I still think Jimbo could have worked. He was stubborn, and he recruited 5 stars and not the right 5 stars. You look at that 22 class, as good as they were, there's a handful of guys, not that are just left, that are actually anywhere doing what we thought that they could do. So, so that's part of it. I think just Mike is detail-oriented, believes in strength training as the basis of your program, a line of scrimmage team. And when this team wins games, what you'll see up until South Carolina, and we could talk about the whys, but up until South Carolina, A&M's offensive line and defensive line did good in the first quarter, did good in the second quarter. By the fourth quarter, they were teeing off on both sides.
Yeah.
They did not do that against Notre Dame. Notre Dame did that to A&M that year, that game. But when A&M is cooking, and it's been a month, but when they're cooking, the second half they take over. And against LSU, Marcel Reed was Bo Jackson Tecmo Bowl. He couldn't be stopped.
It's incredible.
And the offensive line was really good. And, oh, by the way, the defensive line against an LSU offensive line, which we were told was the best in the SEC, if not the country, they dominated and got to Nuss.
Yeah, I'm with you with what the hype with Nussmeier going into it was. I always thought that was more validated than the Jalen Milroe stuff that we saw early in the season, where people even I heard guys Todd McShay and these guys who I really respect try to pump him up as a top 5 draft pick. I thought they were insane. But Nussmeier does look like an actually good quarterback. What A&M did that in that game is what really impressed me. And I do think back to the Notre Dame game, it's a weird game. Riley Leonard, I think has been really good this year besides that game. And I think it might say more big picture about A&M than it does about the early struggles of what Notre Dame's offense was. But
if they have Marcel, I think A&M might win that game.
Yes.
And I didn't think that night.
Yeah, when they make the change from Connor to Marcel, and then they go back to Connor for what was it, for one game?
2 games.
2 games. What were going through all of that? Were you surprised in the way they handled
Excuse
it?
me, 2.5 games because it was Missouri.
Oh, you're right.
It was Mississippi State.
Yes.
First half of LSU.
Were you surprised with the way they, Elko handled it? And when did you start to buy into the Marcel Reed as the quarterback?
People started calling for Marcel in game 1 against Notre Dame, and I was not ready for it. Okay. Then when Marcel does start playing, and he has such a great game against Florida, and he was fantastic against Florida, they're like, man, this kid's got something. Then we go to the Arkansas game. He wasn't very good in that game. They made him one-dimensional, and he couldn't run until the theme that we talked about a moment ago, the fourth quarter, where he got open. They moved him out of the pocket a little bit more. The offensive line started cooking. Le'Veon Moss had his way, and then they started moving. So then I was like, maybe Marcel's got something. At that point, I still thought when Connor is good here in the mind and his foot's ready to go, he's got to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Missouri comes, and freaking Connor Wigman throws a beautiful ball, like all game long. He rips up Missouri, and I didn't think the way I looked at Missouri is kind of the way I looked at Michigan, right? I was like, they're not really this ranking, but it's still a team that's going to win 9 games this year, right? So I looked at that. I was like, man, like that, Connor's back. Mississippi State, they won by 10. He just didn't look right. LSU, and that's where if you go back to the LSU game, this could have been a much worse losing streak in the SEC because for the first half of that game, A&M was getting their tails kicked. Marcel comes in, second series, and ever since then has been his team. And to his credit, he still misses some passes, right? But they're throwing for 250 or 220 yards a game, the last few games. I mean, he threw for 297, I think it was, last game against Auburn. That was a bad game to lose, but Auburn reminds me of 2022 A&M, full of 5-stars everywhere, wide receiver, defensive line, defensive backs, that on the right night at home, especially a night game, it could change the outcome of a game. So, but I think it was that I was late.
Yeah.
Because I still believed, because what we had seen for 2 years.
Yeah.
In the limited time we'd seen Connor
was really
Wigman,
positive.
He was fantastic against Miami. He threw an interception in that game on the last possession because it was a fourth down. He had to throw the ball to get something, and it was an interception. But on that, he was 19-2 coming into this year.
You got one more segment in you?
I got whatever you want.
All right, he is David Nuno from Texags. Obviously, you know him from ABC 13 when he was in Houston as well. We were broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Distillery.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
I think so.
Back here, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station, thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery. Any recommendations?
I mean, you get everything here, dude.
I
The
know.
wings is what I get.
Okay, so you guys do, Texas David Nuno with us here on ESPN 97.5. You guys do your show out here?
Sometimes.
Okay, yeah, because they were telling us that, like, oh, this is normally we have Texas.
Yeah, we're right here on this stage.
Nice.
I love coming here.
Yeah, this is a cool spot. I was like, you're driving in, like.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is this the same Comrex I used to use in 2007?
I guarantee you.
It looks exactly like, I feel like that dent was there when I worked with you guys.
There's no chance we have upgraded our Comrex equipment.
I used this. I guinea pigged this bad boy, I think in 2008 when I was at a wedding in Orlando.
Okay.
And I tried to connect it to the Wi-Fi at a hotel before that was a thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think we got, whatever these cords are.
The Ethernet cords?
Yeah, we got the Ethernet cord to eventually work. But I'm pretty sure I banged this one up on my way to Orlando in 2008.
I'm pretty sure it's the same one.
Yeah.
Because I know for at least, I was with Gal the first time from 2015 to 2018. I'm pretty sure I know it was exactly that same one. So it wouldn't shock me. I know now we have these new fancy Wi-Fi boxes.
Oh, that we didn't have that. No.
Yeah, we can connect anywhere in the world. It's very
Now,
nice,
we did have video. That's one thing we did have.
Yes.
We were one of the first to do video back in the day, Justin TV.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we're all up on YouTube and Twitch now, and it's nice to have it. We just started doing that recently, too, the remote broadcast being on video as well, which is nice. Like, it's a nice little perk. Everyone can see the nice little signage that we got going on here. So this weekend, let's start with just, do you think A&M's going to win this game?
I mean, yeah, I do. But, I mean, nothing will surprise me, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you why I think should is not the right word. Why, if I'm going to make an argument why they're going to win. I don't know how tested Texas is, okay? Before I get hate texts, let me explain. And I'm going to get them anyway, or hate tweets. Texas has not played a night game in the SEC. I think that matters. I do think that matters.
Why does that matter? Is it because of College Station or what's it
like?
No.
No. I think in just general.
Yeah.
I forget what the stat is. SEC teams, I think I have it correct, and you guys can fact check me. This year, at night on the road, the favorite is 14-15. Okay? Texas has gotten to play Arkansas at 11 a.m. I think Florida was at 2:30. Now, that may not matter in this particular game, right? But I think that is something that matters. When A&M goes to Auburn and gets boat race in the first quarter, and that place is rocking for most of the game, and then we force 4 overtimes, it is a real thing. When Alabama came here in 2021, I keep going back to that one, A&M had no business winning that game after losing to Mississippi State the week before and Arkansas the week before that one, right? And they beat Alabama on a magical night. That's one thing Jimbo Fisher was really good at, winning these big games. But if you look at the SEC in general, Ole Miss losing, Oklahoma, does Oklahoma have any business beating Alabama?
Not this year.
No, right?
Not this year.
So I think it's a storyline. It's something to monitor. It does not mean that means automatically A&M is going to win. But I do think if Texas can do, and I feel like I'm giving Sark his game plan, what Texas needs to do, and I know they know this, is get off to a quick lead. Because A&M, in the first quarter of SEC games, the last 3 SEC games, against LSU was down 10-0. Against South Carolina, they were down 14-0. And against Auburn, they were down 21-0. If Texas does that, that'll shut down this place, right? I mean, LSU did it, and A&M came back, and, Marcel had that special moment. But LSU does not have the defense that Texas has. But my point is, night games in the SEC do matter. It absolutely matters. Just look at the metrics. Look, I'll give them props. They recruited as an SEC school for 2 years in the watered-down Big 12. Okay, in the very easy Big 12. I'll keep saying that because they did. You look at what's happened to Oklahoma right
100%.
now. Right? That all being said, they are legit that good. But I think it is something to monitor, like, how do they handle that? The best team they played this year, they lost to. Who's the next best team they've played? Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt's got, 6 wins, right?
Yes.
They may finish with 7 if they beat Tennessee.
Yep.
So your second best win
is against a 6-win team who now their win over Alabama doesn't look as impressive because of what Oklahoma just did.
By the way, we can do the same thing to A&M. Yeah. I recognize that, right? Like I do. I'm just saying that's the SEC. I'm not making it a Texas versus A&M thing.
Yeah.
What's A&M's best win? LSU. Well, LSU may go 9-3, 8-4. They may go 8-4. Okay, I get that. What other game? Missouri. Missouri could go 9-3, 8-4 as well. So you could play that game multiple ways.
Yeah.
But it is a storyline. When your hardest road game to date is Vanderbilt,
it's going to be a different environment.
But
that's what I think with Quinn, and that's why maybe the Arch thing would never actually happen, because I cannot imagine putting him out there in that environment. But I'm curious how Quinn Ewers will handle this environment on Saturday, because it's just gonna be so different. And I know
I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, he's played in big games, obviously.
Yeah,
he's
look,
Texas kid.
Sark doesn't like to make changes at quarterback. Although I actually thought he went to Arch too quickly in the Georgia game.
Yeah, I thought that was strange. I know why they did it. They wanted to send Quinn basically to the locker room and kind of gather your thoughts. And
right.
I still thought it was strange.
But Arch is a real deal quarterback. I used to think, man, he played in Mississippi. He hasn't played against Texas talent. Watch out.
No, you see the highlights of him in high school, and he looks so much faster than everyone and so much bigger than everyone. But we've seen it now translate a little bit.
It works.
Yeah.
He's gonna be just fine.
Yeah.
I do think for Arch even though Arch might have more moxie than Quinn when it's all said and done. Like, do you remember Kobe Bryant? His first playoff, when he shot like 8 threes and kept on missing, and you knew he eventually was going to figure. It was against Utah. You knew eventually it was going to work out for him.
Yeah.
Arch is going to be fine, but I'd be interested again, just as let me see how this plays out, because by the way, Marcel, if Marcel had to go on the road to Georgia, he's got 6-7 starts under his belt. I don't know how he'd handle that.
Yeah. 100%.
Right? So it's just something to look out for. I think Quinn's fine. If his ankle is messed up, here's something to watch. A&M has had an issue getting after the quarterback the last 3 games.
Okay.
Against South Carolina, the defensive line actually made it to Lenore Sellers. They just whiffed 100 times. They had 7 sacks that they missed, right?
That's brutal.
Right? Against Auburn, the only pressure that Peyton Thorne felt was on blitzes. So something happened in that game. Either Auburn's offensive line had their best day, or the game plan was not right. So that's something to watch. I know Texas's offensive line is much superior to most that A&M has faced. I think the interior part is not as good as the exterior.
Yeah, I even though it's one of those where I feel like they're a little overhyped for me. Like, just watching them play, I feel like they gave up a little bit more pressure than what their credibility says.
Yeah.
So for this game, because we know how much this game means, but now with the transfer portal, NIL, is it
now
10 times more than what it used to be?
Well, for the players, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it matters to the players, but until you live it.
Yeah.
I was talking to Jamie McCoy. He played tight end at A&M, went on to play for the Saints. He told me he didn't grasp it, because he played during the day against Texas, until after. Okay. That's when he really felt it, right?
Yeah.
Like, he knew it was a big deal, but after it became a bigger deal, like taking steps back. So I think, I think this game still matters. I don't like the current state of college football. I just don't.
Which part do you not like the most?
I hate NIL transfer portal. I hate it.
So I like the idea of the transfer portal. I like the idea that, players can go. I think they went too far. I think it should have just been, if your coach leaves or is fired, you should get free reign.
Yeah.
Almost like what happened at Penn State, when Bill O'Brien had to take over. Everyone was allowed a free transfer. They didn't have to sit out. I would be very pro that being the only way. So any coach that leaves, if we see Lane Kiffin leave this year or something like that for whatever reason, or Lincoln Riley got fired at USC, like, those kids I think should be allowed free reign to go. I kind of wish we had the other, sit out for a year transfer still if your coach was in place.
I struggle with it because there's a part of me that if you're leaving because there's no path to play, I recognize that.
Yeah.
But if you're leaving because they're dangling money for you, and I also think, I think players should get paid. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I've evolved from the way I felt 5 years ago to where I am now. And with more information, you can change. But I just don't like the idea of leaving and I don't like the idea of playing players that may be physically ready, but not mentally ready. We're starting freshmen and sophomores so they don't leave.
And then I think it goes past even just playing. I give, like Dave Portnoy and him credit, and this Michigan collective for flipping this quarterback. But the idea of giving, I guess I'll just never have this much money in my life, so I'll probably never understand it. But the idea of giving an 17-year-old quarterback $12 million to flip from LSU to Michigan before he even plays a snap for you
Yeah.
kind of just blows my mind. Hell, Quinn Ewers at Ohio State. He only went to Ohio State because Texas wouldn't let him get NIL money. So he left to go there, got paid. We all knew he was going to leave, and all those boosters just lost a ton of money for no reason. Like, so that's what I don't love about it either. I look forward to them actually just getting paid and maybe NIL becoming less of a thing, and the players just actually just making the money that they deserve. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, I don't love it. Do you like what are your thoughts right now on the college football playoff? Like, as we're seeing it play out in front of us going into this weekend.
I love the intrigue by it, right? Like it's I think it's cool. Like do I think A&M would beat Indiana if they played? Maybe, right? Do I
Yes.
think Indiana deserves an invite?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Like I think that's cool, right? I like 12 teams better than 4. I don't think there's ever a perfect system. Like if this is not going to happen to Georgia, but if Georgia were to lose the SEC championship game to A&M or Texas, could they realistically be out? I know they said they wouldn't do it.
I know. We have to wait and see how it plays out, though.
But then why would you play in it, right? Or if they suffer a catastrophic injury,
yes.
Like so, there's that.
Like I struggle with the idea of A&M wins this weekend. They should be in the college football playoff. They will be in the college football playoff, at least based on what the rankings are. But then they play in a game against Georgia. If they lose, they now have 4 losses on the season. They're not going to be in the playoff.
See, I don't think A&M gets in. Yeah, I think A&M has to win the next 2.
You think they have to win the next 2? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think a 9-3 A&M team gets in because I think they were, what are they, 20, whatever the number they are.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I don't think they get in. And look, how many teams from the Big Ten are going to get in? 4?
Yeah, probably 4.
So which 4 teams from? Is the SEC guaranteed 4 teams?
I think so. I think they'll get 4 in.
Tennessee's going to get in, right? Unless they lose to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Okay. Georgia's going to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Texas is going to get in.
Yep.
Is A&M going to get in over Bama if Bama beats Auburn? No.
I would say yes, personally.
But rankings-wise, they would say no.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, and that's where trying to figure out what the committee's doing is hard. Like, the head-to-head stuff hasn't mattered totally this season. But you would think that Notre Dame, now sitting at number 5, will be potentially number, in the top 4 this week and would help A&M
right
at some point this season. I do like the expansion. I do think it makes the games matter. It makes more – okay, this is weird. It makes certain games matter less than they did before, but it also makes more games have importance to them.
Yeah.
Because, like, not everyone in the country cares about Texas versus Texas A&M the way people here do. But it's to go to the SEC championship game, which then puts you in a chance to make the college football playoff with a guaranteed seeding. So I do like the expanded playoff. I'm with you about NIL and the transfer portal.
I don't like them combined.
They butchered it.
Separately, I like it.
Yeah.
Combined, I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of potentially Sark calling up a A&M player this weekend after the game and being like, "See, come on over."
That's what he could have done. Yeah.
And I know Sark won't do it, but one of his assistants or somebody, or one of his kids on his team,
or somebody on their AAU team knows somebody who knows somebody, his grandfather.
Yeah. Well, David, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Thanks for having us out here.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Appreciate you. It is Joe George here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, broadcasting live from inside the Angry Elephant, brought to you by our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery. Back here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Thanks again to David Nuno of Texags for joining us for the last 30 minutes. Nice to catch up with him. Been a while. Don't think I've actually talked to Nuno since he took that job. I think I remember having him when I was at the other station, having him on the afternoon show there, and we were talking to him about covering the Aggies on a full-time basis. And, well, it's a good time to do it as the now the rivalry is returned, and we are out here in College Station at the Angry Elephant, thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery, Enchanted Vodka, and, of course, Texas whiskey as well. Ruben, let's get into this, man. Let's talk about what's going on. Let's go back to the Texans here a little bit. Bobby Slowick.
Mm-hmm.
So how upset will you be if he doesn't get fired?
If he is here next year?
Yeah, give me a scale like 1 to 10.
That's a great. I mean, I'm gonna have to give it upwards between a 7 or 8. I'm not happy with the product I'm seeing right now, and it's hard. It's hard not to, lose faith when I know what's gonna happen every single week.
Mm-hmm.
But I will have to, listen to what our head coach would have to say, and that's probably would be, we're trying to build more rapport. Hopefully, in year 3, we get better, but would not feel confident if that happened. I know a lot of Houston Texans fans would be very upset if he did.
I'm with you. Now? I do think if they at least this one, I'm very confident they will make a change in the offensive line coach.
Okay.
I would be shocked if Chris Strauser is back next year because this isn't a new issue for the Texans, right? Like these guys have been, Laramie Tunsil in his false starts, Titus Howard. They've had their issues, right? Like even before this new regime took over.
Mm-hmm.
But now the way the season's played out, like if you are Bobby Slowick and you're talking to, D'Amico Ryans and Nick Casseri about your job, your future, I think that it's fair to say, like, hey, like this offensive line that Nick, you gave me and that is being coached up by, Chris Strauser is not up to par of what CJ Stroud needs. That we all know. So if there was going to be an argument to keep Bobby Slowick, it does start there. But part of this question, I think, is are you willing to lose Gerard Johnson? Like, is because now that's what everyone's pick of, is who they want to see be the head coach or be the offensive coordinator. They all want Gerard Johnson to be the guy. Mm-hmm. I'm not so convinced that that's going to work out because, when you hired Bobby Slowick, it was a guy who had never called plays before. So you're going to be replacing him with another guy who's never called plays before. He's never, until now, really worked in the Kyle Shanahan level offense. So I still wonder if there's other candidates out there that would be better fits for CJ Stroud and for what this team needs. But, are you willing to lose Gerard Johnson to be the offensive coordinator somewhere else because you didn't promote him? I think that's part of the equation here.
And I think that's just something that the Texans might have to live with, which is why, I'm advocating for them to make a move now. I mean, hey, you could still keep Bobby Slowick for next season and have Gerard Johnson, take over play calling and you just put in the narrative, hey, we just wanted to get a different look. I do think, though, if the offensive coordinator job is available, I mean, this job is going to be attractive, isn't it? CJ Stroud at quarterback, Nico Collins at wide receiver, Joe Mixon at running back. I keep on having this, this dream of Mike McDaniel somehow finding his way back to Houston and just seeing what he can do with the CJ Stroud. However, you mentioned how Bobby Slowick using the offensive line as an excuse because that is, I think, a valid excuse. When you have the highest paid unit in the NFL, a first round on Kenyon, a second round pick plus trade ups for Juice Scruggs, a trade and then a 3-year extension for Shaq, like they did their job in terms of trying to bring the talent. However, it just didn't work out. And then with Chris Strauser, you had people asking for his job all the way back in week 5, especially knowing that he's never been in this type of, scheme and system before. So it's like, what are we doing here? They are built-in excuses for Bobby Slowick for him to get another shot in year 3. To me, I just see a young quarterback, and I feel like the sense of urgency needs to be at an all-time high when you have a young franchise quarterback. And I think any options should be on the table. Maybe CJ could probably get a say in what he would want to.
Yeah,
maybe
I'm curious.
Not,
no, I think your quarterback deserves a say. I don't think that you're. I think like the NBA, for example, they went too far. Like, James Harden being able to say like, hey, I want Dwight Howard out. I want Chris Paul out. I want Russell Westbrook in. Now I want Russell Westbrook out. Okay, well, actually, I just want out. We saw LeBron has obviously over time done the same thing. I do think in football, like your quarterback should have a say. I think if things aren't working, obviously he's always going to. A lot of your quarterbacks are going to blame other people. I mean, I don't think CJ really is that way. Like, I think he's pretty. I think when you hear it's just press conference talk, right? It doesn't mean everything. When CJ talks to the media, though, I think he takes the most accountability of everyone on the
and
team.
it's genuine when he does it. It's not like he's faking it. Like, he actually feels like he's the reason why we're not playing good football right now.
Yeah, like he can be kind of cheesy at times. His shooter's going to shoot and all the stuff that he's been rattling out the last couple weeks and trying to use Steph Curry and LeBron as reference points and stuff. But for the most part, like he's very accountable for what is going on. So I think it definitely starts there, like this offseason with the offensive line, coaching change and potentially changing, as many of those pieces as you can. Like, you don't have a ton of cap space, so like it's not the easiest thing to do in the world, but like I wouldn't be shocked if Titus Howard's not your right tackle next season. That you drafted Blake Fisher for a reason, and then using some of that salary from Titus to move into a different direction to fix your interior wouldn't shock me. No. It also wouldn't shock me if it's just the same group, to be honest with you, with a new O-line coach. I don't love it, but
it wouldn't shock me whatsoever. I wouldn't mind moving Titus around. I do not like him at right tackle. That one season was just a big outlier, which got him that big 3-year extension. Maybe you move him back to guard. Hey, I don't care if he does not want to play guard. That's where we need you the best. What do you do with Jared Patterson again? Do you keep him at center even though you drafted Juice to be your center? There could potentially be 3 new starting interior linemen next year for the Houston Texans. And, of course, that's exactly what you want to see, because when you have a quarterback, you want to keep him from getting pummeled every single snap. And maybe a new O-line coach could get it done. But I definitely agree that there needs to be some work in the offseason. I think a majority of work needs to be on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think so, too. Like, and then whatever's going on in the deep stuff, that D'Amico has to figure out. I mean, as if you figure out now, I'm curious what it's going to look like. I don't love the fact that we're going to see more of it looks like Eric Murray and Kalen Bullock are going to be your 2 safeties, because it looks like Jimmy Ward's going to move into this new position, moving down to replace Jalen Petrie, position he played very well in San Francisco. So, like, that's okay that he's going to be that guy. Or maybe we'll see a little bit more of guys like Devin White on the field in certain packages, and then Jimmy Ward will move back to safety. So they have options. But those are the 2 things, like the offensive line and then the giving up the deep stuff.
Yeah,
I would say those are the most like fixable things on the Texans roster at this point. That I like when they talk about coaching mistakes, communication. Like I still think that they can fix that stuff this season, and that's where like going back to our first conversation of the show. Like I'm not ready to totally give up on them just yet.
No.
What do you think in terms of what you're expecting this weekend? We'll dive more into the game later on, but do you feel like just like you're feeling about the Jacksonville Jaguars? Easy win?
I mean, my heart wants to say easy win, but I know how this offense operates in the second half, which is why I'm kind of hesitant to say, the Houston Texans are just going to run away with this. You brought up the deep stuff allowed earlier. That's all it's been against this Houston Texans defense is big plays, deep balls. If you go all the way back to week 1, how they were able to be in that game was 3 of those big plays from Anthony Richardson and Alec Pierce were against Jimmy Ward, and we are seeing it a constant with Jimmy that he is getting beat on the deep stuff, and we saw it against Tennessee with Will Levis and Calvin Ridley. That's why a lot of fans were asking for Justin Simmons, free agent, and now look how he's playing with the Atlanta Falcons. Imagine how this defense could have been with the addition of him, which is why a lot of other fans bring up if you're D'Amico's boy, he tends to give you a longer leash and maybe, you could do no wrong in his eyes. That's kind of the narrative from the fan base. And I'm saying it's true.
Well, I mean, look, I'm curious your thoughts on this, but I find it strange. And look, maybe it's 3 players.
Okay.
Maybe it's more than that. But Jonathan Grenard said after they played earlier this season that he felt disrespected. And then we've got this Desmond King, Steven Nelson stuff kind of unfolding in front of us this last week. Kind of bizarre, but it does seem now neither of those guys, to the Texans like defense here, neither of them are in the NFL.
Yes.
Steven Nelson, I know he said on that Spaces he was on that he's been contacted by the Detroit Lions. Well, you're still not on the Lions, buddy. Desmond King can tweet out all of his crying emojis and whatever. It just feels interesting. I think it's something to keep an eye on. You've got those two guys in Grenard who seem unhappy with what they thought of the Houston Texans.
100%. And it's not like though their takes are, icing out. They're aging with every week that goes by. And when we hear some of the things going on in NRG, when we see some of the, why hasn't Kenyon Green got benched yet, right? If he gets injured, does he even get benched? That's where the conversations come on. Oh, well, hearing what Steven Nelson said, hearing how Desmond King reacts, and the Houston Texans bringing him back and forth almost every other offseason. It is something interesting to watch going forward. Of course, you don't want that narrative about your head coach that, he has his guys, and if you're not a D'Amico's guy, then you're kind of on your own because we are in the process of, this team's in the process of rebuilding.
Yeah, and you know what? Part of this season too for the Texans is maybe we all just got ahead of ourselves a little bit.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh man, that's where I disagree with
okay,
people.
Why?
Because you have the offensive rookie of the year, the defensive rookie of the year, the finalists for coach of the year, and then the Houston Texans had an offseason where they were the first team in NFL history to bring in a 1,000-yard rusher, a 1,000-yard receiver, and a player with double-digit sacks. It was Daniil and Danico.
Yeah.
So you tie all that up with still a first, what was a first-round pick, but Stephon Diggs.
Yep.
And then, a good drive, you're thinking this team could go places where they've never gone before. And, of course, when you see C.J. Stroud and, D'Amico Ryans going on all the podcasts, being, kind of put on a pedestal, you're thinking maybe the shift is turning in Houston where it's not just our eyes are seeing that the Texans could potentially be something, but it's the outside world seeing it as well.
No, they definitely did. I mean, look, the Texans, when you look at Super Bowl odds, like they were usually like in that between like 6th and 8th at worst in going into the season. So like Vegas had them there. Their win total was proportional with a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. You know what the division was, and because you know what the division was, like that always helps a little bit. I think for me, when I look back at like the preseason hype, so like we did this video where every single person on the station, producers, hosts, everyone did their their predictions, and I think like over half of us had them going to the AFC Championship game. I think for me, what I look back on and say like where I feel like I got ahead of myself a little bit about, because I don't want to speak for anyone else, is the schedule they played last year.
Yeah,
that it was so easy, and just the dud games that they had against the Panthers and the Jets. I think there was more to take from that. Now, as the season's played out, and two of the last 4 games, we also have seen a return of the running game that we saw last year, where Joe Mixon, not his fault. It's not Joe Mixon's fault, but like they're struggling. Look at that. Raiders trying to make a game out of this one in Kansas City right now in the third quarter. You like the Black Friday game? On a very side tangent here right now.
I'm not going to lie. I didn't even know we had a Black Friday game.
This is year 2.
We got here and you brought it up.
Honestly, don't think we needed it. I know the NFL wants to be on all the time. Don't think this was a necessity. Also, like Chiefs, Raiders. Last year was the Dolphins and somebody. But yeah, I don't know if this was a necessity. But for me, that's where it was with the Texans, where I look back, I'm like, like maybe I didn't take enough consideration to the schedule and who they played in. I also was pretty adamant early on that there was going to be no sophomore slump. Like CJ looked like a guy I think that's probably where I was the most wrong, and at least should have been more open to the idea that the way this season has played out, like it seemed. Now looking at like this seems very reasonable, honestly. Like it's frustrating, it's disappointing, for sure, but being where the Texans are, 7-5 or whatever it is right now. CJ having an up and down year. I don't believe the rating, his QB rating is indicative of anything. He's 20th in the NFL. Like that doesn't mean anything to me, but I just think there was more struggle that I was ignoring potentially than what I thought was going to happen.
Oh no, 100%. It just goes to show you that the NFL is a year-to-year league, and when you ask the front office, they're not surprised by this, right? General Manager Nick Caserio, he went up there, had a press conference saying like, oh, we hear about all this outside noise, but that's not what it is. And then when you see D'Amico Ryans go on the Shannon Sharp podcast and said, our goal is to get 1% better every single day, keep our heads down and working, and when we look up and we're at the big game, that's just because of the hard work that we've done. So maybe the front office didn't buy in. But the fan base certainly did.
And the players did. Like Nico has quotes in there about Super Bowl.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, when people were talking about CJ having a sophomore slump, I felt disrespected whenever they said that.
Yeah.
I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
He was so good. Like he was so good last year, and just so we probably ignored it a little bit. All right, we're gonna take a time out. Here's the plan for the rest of the hour. So we are going to kind of talk about what happened in the NFL today, some big news, but overall just Thanksgiving Day reactions and just kind of the state of the NFL as we head outside of the Houston Texans, and then the final two segments of this hour we'll bring back interviews with both Andrew Monaco, the voice of the Aggies, and Craig Way, the voice of the Longhorns. So all that's coming up here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant, thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
Welcome back here to ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station, one of their locations. You can also check them out at Magnolia and in Cypress as well. And we're brought here to by our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery. All of our coverage this week brought to you by Rebecca Creek Distillery, Enchanted Rock Vodka and Texas Ranger Whiskey to celebrate the rivalry's return. We are, what are we now, like 26 hours roughly from kickoff? A little bit more than that, but I'm ready. I'm ready for tomorrow. Tomorrow's like my favorite day of the year. Rivalry Saturday in college football. The chaos that's going to unfold. It's going to be absolutely incredible. But obviously in the NFL, Ruben, we saw some chaos unfold today. Saw Matt Eberflus get fired.
Huge.
Third coach already this season fired, which feels like a pretty high number. Like I'd have to go back and look through, but I feel
At
like
this point, right?
Yeah, at this point, like
this
three
point.
coaches fired. And I heard Adam Schefter do a podcast recently, and he was talking about, actually it was from the offseason. He was on Part of My Take. the Barstool Sports podcast, and he was saying how he thought like this might happen. That because of specifically Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel, who you can talk to right now without any really rules or restrictions, we might see some teams get more aggressive in firing their coaches in the NFL. And the fact that we've seen 3 coaches fired already, like doesn't really surprise me, especially the teams that it's been. I don't think we're going to see any more in season though.
You don't think Jacksonville might?
I mean, I thought they were going to fire Doug Peterson 4 weeks ago, man.
Yeah, I thought they were going to leave him in London.
Yes, like I especially like if they would have lost the second game in London, because they only lost the first one to the Bears, and I think they won the next week. Definitely would have left his ass in London.
Yeah,
but I've been thinking Jacksonville's going to fire him for weeks. He's like talking negative about their quarterback. They try to say the reporters give him softballs of like, "Hey, what do you think of Trevor Lawrence today? He looked pretty good." And then his responses are always like, "Well, yeah, but it was really like the offensive line and other guys." And it's like that's such a strange response to come from your coach. Like, so I would say yes, Doug Peterson would be one that I would think. Maybe the Texans can be like that final. If they embarrass Jackson, if the Texans win by 20 plus points this weekend, I would be surprised if Doug Peterson has a job on Monday.
No, 100%. After the season that they had, and they themselves had a crazy offseason, spending a lot of money, spent their first-round pick on Brian Thomas Jr., just gave Trevor Lawrence a big extension. They're thinking they're going to be competing with the AFC side with the Texans, and fortunately has not been the case this season. You know, last year, the Jaguars were in first place pretty much the entire year until the last 9 weeks of the season, just an epic collapse. And now they, like I said, they had that offseason thinking they could compete for it. And unfortunately, it's just horrible for them.
Yeah, I mean, the firings that have happened so far this season, like if Doug Peterson were to be fired, they all were obvious, right? Like you knew last year when Jacksonville collapsed, it was like, okay, things are probably going to head downhill. They could have fired Doug Peterson last year. Eberflus should have been fired last year, even though Aaron Rodgers was hurt. And obviously, the Jet season's been a disaster without Robert Saleh. It was very easy to argue Robert Saleh should have been fired last year. So they all seem kind of obvious that have happened so far. But Saleh would be the only. I mean, Doug Peterson, I think, would be the only other one right now. Dennis Allen also felt obvious.
Yeah,
that I would say at this point in the season, it would not surprise me. Like Antonio Pierce, who his team's obviously playing right now. I know people have been saying he might be a one and done. I don't think that happens in season. So I think for in-season firings, we're done. The one today, though, like everyone who's listening knows, I'm happy.
Oh, 100%.
I do think they showed their ass today a little bit, as why they're an embarrassing organization. I don't like the fact that they made Matt Eberflus have a press conference and have quotes like, "I expect to be the coach on Sunday against the 49ers," and then fire him 2 hours later. Players apparently found out via ESPN that it was happening. Yes.
That is crazy. And, you know, his firing reminds me when I was fired back in the day at an old job. I had to go through a whole meeting about the upcoming season, only for them to say, "Unfortunately, Ruben, you're not a part of it." So I know exactly how Eberflus felt just dumb in the moment. But, you know, you see, you know, Big Cat on Barstool just always complain about the Chicago Bears
we saw what
organization. And, you see what happened last night, and you're like, how do you not call a timeout in that situation? We don't get paid millions of dollars. You know, we're thousandaires, right? So we're screaming, timeout.
Dude, it was so off. Well, okay, so they've got 4 games this year, which they lost the Hail Mary game to Washington. You have the block kick versus the Packers. Last week, they get it back to overtime, but they collapse in overtime. And then this week happens versus, this disaster versus the Lions. If you win 2 of those games, you're in the playoff hunt. You have a good coach. He moved to 5-19 as the head coach of the Bears in 1-score games. It was by far a 21% win percentage. By far the worst in the NFL. Felt very obvious that was going to happen. Where we stand right now for the end of the season, I think Mike McCarthy, even though I don't buy the Jerry Jones stuff this week,
no,
where he's like,
talks now.
No. That's him being like, they're friends. So he's being nice to Mike McCarthy. He is telling Mike McCarthy, like, hey, like, I'm not going to embarrass you midseason. I'm going to fire you in the offseason, most likely. I'm not going to do it right now, which is the right thing to do if you have that relationship. It doesn't matter this year now that Cooper Rush is your quarterback. Like, what does firing Mike McCarthy do besides just cause chaos in the organization? So Mike McCarthy is on there for me. Doug Peterson, if not then. So that gets us to 6 openings. Um,
Bobby Slowick, hopefully.
yeah, Bobby Slowick.
Nah, but
I think I still wonder about Cincinnati. I'm
What
a little
about the
curious.
Giants?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think the Giants make sense. I wouldn't fire him personally.
Really?
I don't think it's his fault. He took Daniel Jones to the playoffs, and Daniel Jones is his quarterback.
That's
We were talking about Bobby Slowick being fired after DJ was on with us Tuesday and said he didn't think it would happen for Paul and I. I came up with a list of 5 offensive coordinator options.
Mhm.
So and there was in no particular order, but Gerard Johnson was one of them. I went back to the 49ers. So Brian Greasy,
okay.
I brought up as an option. No play calling experience, but obviously a longtime NFL player. Like you would just think that would make sense for him. Because I don't expect the new coach to retain him. It just doesn't happen very often, and I don't think Clint Kubiak will be the head coach of the Saints. I put him as an option.
Okay.
I don't think Mike McDaniels is going to get fired. But the other 2 guys were if you're going to go outside of D'Amico Ryan's his coaching tree and guys he knows, I did have Brian Dable and Zach Taylor on my list of like if Cincinnati were to make a move or the Giants were to make a move, they would make sense as guys to come in and be the OC for the Texans, I think, personally. My long shot, I don't think I even told Paul this, was Lincoln Riley. If he gets fired at USC.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think there's a small chance that happens. Like if he got fired at USC, like would he be someone the Texans would call?
So just bringing in someone straight from college.
Yeah.
Well, you know my long shot, and that's Mike McDaniels. But no, I think the question will be: is D'Amico Ryans going to go outside of what he knows, and that is the Shanahan system?
Mm-hmm.
You hear some people say that the Shanahan system is, starting to get figured out. We saw Coach Flores over there in Minnesota just dismantle whatever the Houston Texans had going on. I like the Brian Dabo that you mentioned. The guy from Cincinnati, I like that as well. Going outside of something that is a bit of a risk for D'Amico Ryans, but year 3 of CJ Stroud, and it's time to start winning football games. It's time to start putting talent around him before we have to make that big decision about how much he gets a year. I wouldn't mind going outside of the Shanahan system if it was me.
Yeah,
and a change was made.
I do think the Shanahan system is being caught up to. Like, there's always now sometimes teams rebound, like they find a way to fix it. Like at one point we thought, Vic Fangio had kind of unlocked the keys for the NFL for Sean McVay. Obviously we saw like that Super Bowl with Goff versus the Patriots it was a disaster. But I look back to last year, and I look at the Baltimore Ravens, what Mike McDonald did, and he beat the Houston Texans 25-9 in Week 1 and 34-10 in the playoffs. He beat the San Francisco 49ers 33-19, and then the Dolphins 56-19. He didn't give up more than 20 points to the 3 teams that really run the best version of the Kyle Shanahan system. So I kind of am with you. We're like, I wonder if a blueprint was kind of put together last year by Mike McDonald, and now he's the Seahawks head coach, of like, hey, this offense, like we've all kind of caught up and figured it out. And I do wonder, like, if moving away from that system, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I also like want to push back, like the idea of CJ's got to learn a new offense. I don't care. He'll figure it out.
Yeah, smart guy.
He failed the S2 test, right? Yes, we know that. Okay. At no point over the last year and a half have we had any reporting, anyone inside the organization leak it out or anything, that CJ Stroud struggled to figure out this complex offense. So if it didn't happen as a rookie, why would I be worried it's going to happen now?
No, you're absolutely right to think that. I'm all for now you're bringing me in. Let's get a new offensive coordinator and let's put CJ under a new system and let's get it right back on track. I just think that when it comes to your young quarterback, man, all options should be on the table and its development, because what's going to drive the Houston Texans for the next decade is going to be CJ Stroud. So these are the prime moments in his young career where having him develop into that veteran quarterback where you can rely on not only to win games, but to be the reason why you win games is just so crucial at this stage in his career.
All right.
All options should be open.
Very much agree. All right, when we get back, we're going to start going back to some of the interviews from our coverage of A&M and Texas this week. So when we return, Andrew Monaco, the voice of the Texas A&M Aggies, was on the Killer Bees on Wednesday with Jeremy and Jermaine, as Joel Blank was out for the holidays already. So we'll play that interview for you next year on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
Back here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, Joe George and Ruben hanging out with you from 3 to 7 today. Thank you again to David Nuno for joining us earlier. Quick update before we get into one of these interviews we're going to be playing for you guys. Trevor Lawrence officially listed as questionable for this weekend for our fantasy football players out there. We also just got word that Brock Purdy will be listed as questionable, and his backup was on the practice squad or in his practice squad little outfit today. So looks like he's not going to be playing, looks like Brock Purdy will be playing. And the Las Vegas Raiders have taken a 17-16 lead over the Kansas City Chiefs. So we are broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. We're out here thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery, Enchanted Vodka, and Texas Whiskey. Thanks to them, we had a bunch of great interviews this week that we're going to be playing out throughout the 4-hour show today. So right now we will go back to the Killer Bees from Wednesday. They were joined by Andrew Monaco, the play-by-play voice of the Texas A&M Aggies. And here he is talking about first the feeling and vibes at College Station going into this game.
Yeah, I think once you said with the stakes that are involved, I think that changes everything for this. So the 13-year absence when the Aggies went to the SEC after the attempt to go to the Pac-12 to make it the Pac-16, that fell through. The Longhorn Network came on, and the Aggies said, that's enough. We're looking east. We're not looking west. And then, there's a lot of grief that A&M took for that from Texas. And DeLon Stodd said, look, we're not playing them again in football. I'll decide when we do it. And he was wrong. The SEC decided. Greg Sankey decided when we were going to play again. So Texas and Oklahoma said they were going to come into the SEC, and in this new era of college football, you need brands. You have to be a brand to be part of in this breakaway that's going to happen in a couple of years, the Super Division One. So the SEC went out and got 2 more very strong brands. So it brings the rivalry back. 119th time. What it means is interesting in that there's a lot of guys who are going to play in this game on Saturday who don't know about it. They didn't grow up with this rivalry. But who's going to be in the stands and who's going to be watching? Those are the people I think you rekindle all the memories where heroes are made, sometimes unsung heroes. You don't know until a game like this. And I think with the stakes like this makes it a little bit different from games in the past. Sometimes it's been, you know what, Texas needs the win and to go on to a national championship. I know the win in 63 was big for Darrell K. Royal. That started that little run of championships. And if you remember at that time, Texas didn't have one and Texas A&M did. Or there's times that each school has kind of ruined a great season for the other. Now this is an SEC championship semifinal, if you will. The winner gets Georgia. So it's not only the most anticipated because it's been gone for 13 years. With the stakes being this high, I think it just adds to what will be probably a pretty dramatic Saturday.
Andrew Jermaine Every here. I just wanted to know, also what will add to that dramatic Saturday. Do you think that the lack of hype and or buildup for this game, do you think that will have any impact on once the guys actually hit the field, the whistle is blown, and the ball is there? Do you think that intensity will pick right back up?
Well, I think it will. I really do. I think there's 2 things when you get in a game like this. Emotion only gets so far, then that burns out. So then what's left? What's left is your training, right? What's left is is it going to be the Aggies or the Longhorns play to their identity? And I always say this about teams as well. Can you hide your flaws sometimes during a game as well? Will there be intensity? The reason why I say yes to that is a lot of these guys have played against one another in high school. Some have been teammates, and now they're at opposite schools. They know one another, and they have played throughout high school and trying to get to Cowboy Stadium, right? To play in that state championship. So you have that, I think, is rekindled. And I would be stunned if any of the interesting, right? 2 head coaches who really don't know or have coached in this, but I think both of them understand what this rivalry is. They're going to be reminded all the time from family, Aggies around campus, who they run into, Longhorns on that campus, and again with a postseason being there. Like Texas A&M's loss to Auburn took any opportunity unless they win out of getting into the 12-team playoffs. They can't win this week and lose to Georgia and expect that would be 4 losses. You can't expect it. Texas has a little bit of a safety net, but I don't think that takes away at all of the intensity. I think there's, if there's bragging rights for Texas for having won the last matchup in 2011, I think you're going to have the same thing in 2024. You want to have that bragging rights going forward of when it was resumed that your school came out on top.
Andrew Monaco joining us on the HRNP guest line. Our good friend Chris Fisher from connecting us. Andrew, the voice of the Aggies. Marcel Reed's had a run of play now for Texas A&M. What has he added to this offense for the Aggies?
You know what? There's that dual threat dimension for a young kid who Jimbo Fisher took from Ole Miss. He was highly recruited. And last year, he was number 4 last year, if you think about it. And he really learned under Jimbo and Bobby Petrino, and then he's really connected with Colin Klein. Always being ready. I think he surprised people. When Connor Wigman was injured, I think everybody expected Jalen Henderson, who was the number 3 last year. But Marcel Reed beat him out. And he's been the most consistent, dual threat. He can throw the ball, still has to work on accuracy. But I think over the course of this year, you've seen his decision-making get better. Mike Elko was joking with me. He said in the old days, dual threat meant you couldn't throw, that you were just a runner. And I think those days are over now. And I thought even in the Auburn loss, I thought you could see him grow up an awful lot. He didn't panic. He ran more than he did the week before against New Mexico State, which you would expect. But I think you're just seeing a quarterback grow up before your eyes. The confidence that he's playing and the trust that he has with his teammates as well. That is big. Now, what has helped Marcel Reed throughout this season? The running game. I think Le'Veon Moss took a lot of pressure off that, and that's where Amari Daniels has to come through for Texas A&M. They've got to be able to run the ball. I think Texas would like to try to make A&M one-dimensional and have to throw it. With the turnovers that they create, they would love to have the ball in the air more than A&M would like. But Marcel's also a terrific runner. But what he used to do, I think, was run, when he didn't see that first option open. Now he's progressing. Now there are designed runs as well for him, and he's a really good runner. But now I think he's looking, if he doesn't find his receiver, that's when he takes off. I really think the decision-making of Marcel Reed and his confidence have made him a better quarterback now in week number 12.
Yeah, I love the way that he's just come in and automatically turned that offense around. It's been amazing to watch. If you take away his sack yards lost and you add that back into his rushing yards, he's actually averaging over 5 yards a carry, which is pretty respectable for any type of runner, especially 5.5 yards a carry at college football. Not that bad. Not in the shake a stick at. On the other side of the ball, where do you see a defensive player making a huge impact against this Texas offense?
Well, it's got to be on that. It's got to be on that defensive line. That's the strength of this line. It's Nick Scorton there on the edge, and it's so interesting in the SEC seeing all the impact edge players. Every team has not one; they've got two on each side. So it's Nick Scorton and Shamar Stewart, or for the Aggies, in fairness, with that jack position that's now in college football, it's Cassius Howe. And I think they have to get pressure on Quinn Ewers. As I say that, I'm really impressed with what they've done in the interior. I think defensive tackles Albert Regis and Shamar Turner have been instrumental in this defense being so good. Now, that also falls back to what it's been at Texas A&M, right? Nnamdi Madubuike, who's now with the Ravens, Bobby Brown, who's now with the Rams, Miles Garrett, Von Miller. You've got to have those types of players. I think that defensive line has to, if you can sack Quinn Ewers, great. But you have to, at the very least, pressure him and get him off time. He reminds me more of Garrett Nussmeier of LSU than Lamar Sellers or Taylor Green at Arkansas. He's a little more of a pocket presence. He will move and give himself room. He'll run when he has to. I think he's more Connor Wigman, if you're going to use it, an A&M quarterback, than he is a Marcel Reed. But that defensive line has got to win that line of scrimmage. Can't allow Texas to run, and you've got to get pressure on Quinn Ewers.
That was our interview from Andrew Monaco when he was on with the Killer Bees. Not Joel, he was out. Jermaine and Jeremy on Wednesday. All of that from our coverage brought to you by Rebecca Creek Distillery and Whiskey, of course, Enchanted Rock Vodka and Texas Whiskey as well. We are broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. We're gonna give one play-by-play voice. We got to give the other. So coming up next, Craig Way, voice of the Longhorns. His interview from the Killer Bees will be up next here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
Welcome back in on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Joe George alongside my guy Ruben, Mr. 713 Houston Sports on YouTube. So, you know what? We're actually a little late here. We're going to wait on the interview, AJ, until the next segment. We'll play it at 5 o'clock with Craig Way. So let's talk a little more Texans here. Before we do that, though, tell the people, Ruben, what you up to? Where can they find you? How often are you going live on YouTube? What are you up to?
Yeah, you guys can find me on YouTube. Just type in 713 Houston Sportcast in the search bar. It pop right up. We've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years now. Started when Lermy Tunsil was traded to the Houston Texans, and we've been going strong since then. Me and my guys, we like to do a watch party every single week, live play-by-play. We get crazy, during home games. We come straight from the tailgate.
Nice.
So we go to the tailgate around 9, party to around 11:30, then come home and then hit the live stream. We just want to give fans, a fresh, young perspective from, someone from the age and someone who's young, man. Not anything, wrong to you, Mr. Joe, but
Bro.
fresh, young perspective
Ruben,
from the
how
age.
old are you?
I'm 27.
I'm 32.
Yeah, I'm just saying, just young here.
You're the same age as my wife. You're not that young. No, you're the same age as my brother. She's a little bit older than that, but yeah, it's no. I love what you guys are doing there on YouTube. If you guys haven't been checking out as well, the Twin Toros podcast, him and Nick Stevenson, we drop Ruben's podcast every Tuesday.
Shout out to Nick
on the ESPN Houston YouTube channel. We drop that live at 7:30. So that's been going every Tuesday since Rock the Mic, and it's been going awesome. And thank you guys for doing that. Thank you for coming out here and doing this show with us today. And look, we got a lot more to get into. So let's feed back into the Texans here just for a couple minutes before we play that interview with Craig Way, the play-by-play voice of the Texas Longhorns. In terms of like the team as a playoff contender, like we talked about how we were feeling about the team earlier, but as you see this team right now, it does feel like the playoffs are kind of set in the AFC after Miami's loss yesterday. It kind of feels like, we're going to see the Chiefs, Bills, Steelers, Texans, Ravens, Chargers, and Broncos be in the 7 teams. Right? Like, I don't know, unless you think like the Colts or Dolphins are going to make a run.
No.
Maybe there's still an outside shot for the Bengals.
Maybe.
But they're 4 and 7, so that's a 3-game difference to make up. Of the 7 teams that, or the 6 other teams outside of Houston, who are the Texans better than right now? Do you think they're better than the Broncos right now? Because as much as I like D'Amico, I think Denver has a better coach right now. Sean Payton, Super Bowl champion. He's done really well with Bo Nix there. Just feels like they're humming on a really good play right now. I would still have the Texans better than the Broncos. I think when you actually like deep dive into what Bo Nix is doing this year, like he's having success down the field, but it's taking him so many throws to do it. Like they just keep chucking the ball down the field, so he's hitting on some of them.
Yeah,
but proportionally, like, it's not that great. So now that's a bad matchup if the Texans were to get that at some point. Because obviously that's a weakness. I still think they're a better team than the Broncos, and I think the Chargers is a toss-up. Like, I don't think you can definitively say the Chargers or the Texans are better than the other one. The better coach definitely is on the Charger side, and that's no disrespect to D'Amico, but Jim Harbaugh might be one of the top 3 coaches again already in the NFL. So I think they're better than the Broncos. I think it's a toss-up between the Chargers. And then at this point, I think everyone else is better than them. You agree with that? Or
yeah, I agree. I think with Denver, the only thing that right now we can say why we put the Houston Texans over them is the fact that Bo Nix is a rookie quarterback. However, he is exciting out there, and he can scare you. Like you said, they like to chuck the ball up deep. But I think if we had to go up against the Denver Broncos, we would see this defense take advantage of a rookie quarterback. Chargers, like you said, that is a toss-up, and I have to agree with you. There are a lot of things to love about the Chargers, and then there are a lot of things where you're like, okay, they are still a young team. They're still developing. But Coach Harbaugh, just the energy that he brings to the team, it's contagious.
Yeah,
and,
man.
like you heard the stories of him back at Michigan climbing trees, to recruit his players. So I just think in today's NFL age, players feed off that, and energy is a big part of the game is now. So I would put it as a toss-up. I just feel like whenever, I got CJ Stroud, I have an opportunity in any game, so that's why I put it at a matchup. But as far as everyone else, I 100% agree. Right now, they are better than the Houston Texans.
Yeah, that's where I still like believe in CJ. Is
Yes.
like you have CJ Stroud. He's done enough to where he's shown you in big moments. The Bengals game last year, the Cardinals game last year, the Bills game this year. Like when you need to count on him, he can come through in the clutch. And like it's been bumpy the last couple of weeks, but even like the Green Bay game, like he put them in position to win that game.
Yeah.
Like he's done his job for the most part. The last 2 weeks have been the most discouraging for him. If you were to just to flip it in a hypothetical world here to the NFC, there's maybe one or two more teams in terms of like how deep that conference goes. Like it's a little more muddied towards the bottom of the conference. I would say the Texans are better than the Falcons.
Okay.
I think they're better than the Commanders. Jaden
Agree.
Daniels is struggled a little bit. I know his stats look great by the end of last week, but the Cliff Kingsbury second half of the season drop off has definitely hit that offense like right in the mouth. I think that's probably, and then probably Seattle. I would say they're better than Seattle.
You don't like Arizona? You don't think we'll be better than our Arizona matchup?
I struggle with that one because, like, I think yes. I think the answer to that is yes. But there's something about them I've just liked over the last 2 years. So I would say I'll put them in front of Arizona. If they would use Marvin Harrison Jr. more, maybe I'd feel differently. But yeah, I put them in front of Arizona, Washington, Atlanta, Seattle. So I'd feel better about them if they were in the NFC.
Yeah.
Like if they're in the NFC South, I'd be like, yeah, they're going to beat out the Falcons to win the division, and they're going to be fine. Like they're going to be one of the top three seeds in the NFC. The AFC is just tougher, and that's what's unfortunate right now for the Texans. Like for the long term.
Yeah, we could give Arizona a toss-up there like we did with the Chargers. I do like Jonathan Gannon as head coach. We were potentially talking about him being a Houston Texans head coach. And, you saw his first interview where he sees, I think it was Carter, and he's like, fireworks, fireworks, fireworks. I see that everywhere. But, yeah, I think that the Arizona Cardinals against us will probably be a toss-up. But I think better than the Seahawks, better than the Commanders, and we're better than Mr. Kirk change down there in Atlanta.
That I agree with for sure. Even though they've had some fun moments this year.
Yeah.
Like they got some weapons. They're actually finally using Drake London and Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts. Like if you've had them in fantasy football, you're not as disappointed this year as you were in previous years. All right, it is Joe George and Ruben broadcasting live from here from the Angry Elephant in College Station here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery and Shannon Rock Vodka and Texas whiskey. We're going to take a time out. When we get back, we're going to play one of our interviews from our coverage of A&M in Texas this week. Craig Way, the play-by-play voice of the Texas Longhorns, was on with the Killer Bees on Wednesday. We'll play that interview for you next, a.k.a. so Ruben and I can eat the delicious cheeseburgers that just got put in front of us. That's next here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Joe and Ruben broadcasting live on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Hanging out here at the Angry Elephant in College Station. Very cool bar. Definitely looking forward to checking out the locations in Magnolia and Cypress, which is pretty new opened. Sam was just telling us, the director of operations, and they'll be having a big watch party there for Texas A&M, of course, coming up tomorrow night. We are getting closer and closer to being 24 hours away from kickoff. We were out here thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery. All of our coverage of A&M versus Texas this week is brought to you by Rebecca Creek Distillery. And coming up right now, we're going to play an interview with Craig Way. He is the play-by-play voice of the Texas Longhorns, and he joined Jermaine and Jeremy on the Killer Bees yesterday to talk about the vibes and games of what's happening in Austin.
There's a lot of excitement clearly about the rivalry returning, and of course that's largely fan-based, and the alumni for both schools are really worked up about it and everything. From the football perspective, from listening to Sark talk about it and a lot of the players talk about it, it's kind of a means to an end, meaning win this game, and then Texas will be in Atlanta for the SEC championship game next week, and probably will lock up a spot in the college football playoff no matter what happens in Atlanta next week. But if they win Saturday night College Station, it gives them the chance to win the SEC title, which has been a stated goal, and then they would get a bye in the first round. But first things first, they know they're going to have to deal with A&M and all that entails, not only the football team, which is a good team, but dealing with that environment in College Station, which is certainly quite unique.
Craig, Jermaine over here. Do you see this Texas team with everything that they have in front of them being a potential SEC title and also a potential or looming college football playoff appearance? Do you see them as maybe kind of overlooking the Aggies this coming Saturday?
No chance of that. Zero chance of that. Because if they lose to A&M, all of their destiny goes out of their own hands. They may still wind up in the playoff. Depending on what else, but if you have a weekend of chaos like what happened last week, you're really, asking for others to help you out and I don't think there's any chance of, that question was asked last week going into the Kentucky game about, hey, you're coming off one rivalry game, Arkansas, and going into another one the following week, A&M, any chance that this could be a trap game or something like that? And Sark was pretty adamant about saying, no, our guys are zeroed in on the task at hand, and they were, and went out and won the game by 17 points. I definitely think there's not going to be a chance of that, given that it's the first time they will have played in 13 years and the restoration of this rivalry, and what at stake, a chance to go to the SEC championship and probably then really get a stranglehold on a spot in the college football playoff if they win Saturday night.
Craig Way joining us on the HR&P guest line. Yeah, I was wondering that too, looking at the college football playoff rankings, and then you're talking about winning this, lock yourself up in the SEC championship game, which at that point you've done enough. And then, of course, you have the high stakes of playing for a bye, which means you only need 3 wins to win the national championship versus 4. I wonder if they've done enough. I think that they have already done enough to make the college football playoff, but it goes to what you said. There's no way that any coach in America is going to allow his team to, hey, guys, if we lose this game, don't worry about it. We're still going to be in. That's just not the mentality you can have as a program.
Yeah, here's what I think, Jeremy. I think they've done enough to be in, but a loss sets them back a little, and then you're just hoping that others don't pass you after you've had the loss. That was your last impression that you're leaving with the committee was a defeat. And even though they're number 3 in the rankings, and if it all ended today, the regular season, they'd go into the 2 slot because only one Big Ten team can go. Either Ohio State or Oregon can get that bye. The other would go into probably the 5 hole. So you're right. I think they look at it like they got to keep their foot on the gas and handle this deal because then not only do they win and get to the SEC championship game and a chance to play for the conference title and get a bye and all that, it also keeps them very high up in the rankings. So that even if they do lose to Georgia in Atlanta, which would be difficult having already lost to them at home this year in Austin, but if they get the win this week then I think folks will look at it and say, well, they're definitely in, and they're probably still in good shape, even if they were to lose the SEC title game, to host a playoff game, to be in that 5, 6, 7, 8 slot, which guarantees you a game at home in the first round. They'd love to get the bye, and I know that Lane Kiffin said all this stuff about coaches not wanting to play that game and not wanting to be. Of course, he doesn't have to worry about it anymore since they got knocked out last week by Florida. But Sark has said from day one, and his players have said from day one, the goal is to win the SEC title. They're not worried about, hey, get in the conference championship game and maybe you lose and they get knocked out. Well, Ole Miss had 2 losses at the time. That's why I said that. Here's Texas with 1 loss. It's to Georgia, who's already in the conference championship game. If they handle their business and are able to beat A&M Saturday night, even a second loss to Georgia, I don't think it's going to knock them out of the playoff. And I think a win Saturday night would, at the very least, guarantee them a home first-round playoff game going into Atlanta with a chance to win the title and get that bye in the first round. Then you get 3 weeks to get your guys rested and ready to go, starting in the bowl season in the quarterfinals, which for Texas would almost certainly be in the Sugar Bowl.
Given that this rivalry is resuming after a 13-year hiatus, most of these guys probably don't even know or could remember, the height of this rivalry or would like how heavy this weighs on the people in the state. Do you think that there's like a lack of sense of urgency or like there's levity lost in this rivalry for the guys that are going to be playing on Saturday?
No, but see, here's the difference. What they're looking at it as the next opponent. It's really kind of an interesting perspective on it, because when we were talking to the guys this week, as you pointed out, none of them played in this game. I mean, the last time was 13 years ago. Now, I kidded. Rashade Barron is a Thorpe Award finalist, and he's a 6-year senior. And I said, hey, you just barely missed it. We joked about it, but he, those guys have all said things like, yeah, I remember watching it when they were like 8, 7, 9. They were like in elementary school, and so it holds a different meaning. But I will also tell you this: most of the guys, at least on the Texas side, know players, and in many cases are friends with players who are on the other side, who play for Texas A&M. So they know each other well. It's just a different look at it. It's not that deep-seated hatred thing. It doesn't mean they're looking at it with a relaxed attitude. I think they're just looking at it differently. And most importantly, they're looking at it from the perspective of, this is the team that's in our way. We got to get past them to have a shot to be in the playoff. I think that is the overriding feeling that's going on with this football team.
Craig, how's the ankle for yours? I've read he's practicing, so it must be okay.
Yeah, it's a little sore, but he was able to finish the game the other day, and then he's had treatment throughout the course of the week. But he is able to practice. He has worked on it. He'll be ready to go. I don't think there's any question about that. He'll have his opportunity to go out there, and he really wants to play in this football game. A lot of these players, even though they've never played in this game, are very, very excited about having the chance to play in this game. And he is one of them. So I think you'll definitely see him in uniform ready to go Saturday night.
Nice. Yeah, I can't wait for this rivalry to get resumed myself, because I've, as a person of my age and growing up watching this rivalry and knowing what it meant to see all of these guys on the field and playing and whatnot, knowing that they've all played together is pretty exciting. But one thing that I'm really looking forward to is just to see what this Texas offense looks like against this A&M defense in College Station at night with everything that they have on the line. Do you think that there's going to be any butterflies in the stomach or any trepidation, or do you think that environment will rattle this offense any, and that they'll be able to get back on track and maintain on track like they were doing earlier in the season when they were producing more points and more yards?
Well, there'll definitely be butterflies. If there aren't, they're not human. That should definitely be the case. And I think there would definitely be butterflies. Now, having said that, I think they understand, what's at hand here and what the preparation has been like all the way through. So I don't think it's a situation where it's going to hamper them. What they have to maintain and what they have to stay away from is something that has popped up recently, that fumbling issue that they had, which normally has not been the case this year, but it did pop up last week. And Sark said, I need to go back and take a look at this and see if we're doing something wrong in terms of coaching, because they had 3 fumbles last week from guys who don't normally fumble the football. Now, they only lost one of those, but it was important to make sure that they get everything buttoned up and all of the other important offensive elements. I think that's the important thing to keep in mind here.
Thanks again to Craig Way and both Andrew Monaco for joining us on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 this week with our coverage of the game, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Distillery. We're still coming up on the show. We will go back to some of the interviews with John and Dell from Tuesday and Wednesday. They had Selvin Young and Steve McKinney on the show, so we'll bring those interviews to you guys as well. But when we get back, let's get back into your Houston Texans and what's going on. What are you concerned about that is a long-term concern? What is a short-term concern that you're convinced will be fixed? We'll get into that next year on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, Joe George and Ruben broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery, Texas Whiskey, and Enchanted Rock Vodka. Our guy Sam here, the Director of Operations, brought us some shots earlier. You've taken one?
Yeah, I'm taking one. I'm feeling good.
I'm trying to decide how I'm going to take one of these. I don't think I can take both of them.
It's either 2 now or 2 before you go.
Yeah, we got a beer too. We got to drive.
Yeah, we're feeling great.
We got a lot to look. We got plenty of time. We're here with you guys till 7:00. We'll have the Selvin Young interview coming up at 5:45, and then we'll play the Steve McKinney interview for you guys coming up at 6:30. The Chiefs just took down the Raiders, 19-17 on this Black Friday football game. Didn't get to see it. Oh, there's Taylor Swift. But apparently Antonio Pierce is something very stupid. It appears, which is not a surprise. He's been a fine head coach, not a great head coach. He might be on that list of coaches to be fired, I think, as well. The one and done thing's kind of over. Like they're obviously like the Texans were all about it, but like other organizations fire their coaches after a year or two. So it wouldn't shock me if they did something like that this offseason. But let's get back to our Texans. So this weekend, big game versus the Jags. And you know what? I think it is a big game. Like it's Jacksonville. You should beat the crap out of them. But like, I want to feel confident, but in your mind, we have to all be reasonable, right? Like, you know, it hasn't looked good for most of this season, and you lost to the Titans last week, who roster-wise are definitely the worst team between them and Jacksonville. But Trevor Lawrence, questionable to play. That does feel like that means he's going to, unless a surprise happens after Mac Jones' last couple weeks for them. When you look at this team, Ruben, you know, you talk about it every single day, like, long-term versus short-term concerns are obviously very different. What's something that you think the Texans, like you expect them to fix, or you would be disappointed that they don't fix over the next 5 games?
So I'm looking at 2 areas here. One of them is the offensive line, and how you could maybe not fix it but patch it up is something that we talked about. The quick games to Nico Collins, to your wide receivers, trusting them to win their one-on-one matchups early. Tank Dell, we haven't really seen Tank Dell, consistently this year. I know he's someone that can help CJ out more. Utilizing your 2 running backs, not only Joe Mixon, but Dare has shown that he could be a pretty reliable pass-catching running back. Do anything you can to take the pressure off of your young quarterback, and, also would potentially maybe a change of caller. Maybe the offensive line could do a little bit better, right? But when we've seen the resume throughout this season, we just know that these guys can't block. Kind of long-term problem, right? You talked about it also, the deep ball. We have been getting beat by the deep ball since last year, and it was by the same guy, right? Jimmy Ward, and now he is here again, consistently getting beat. And this is a problem going forward because we know how special this front four is. But it seems like whenever, in the rare instances where the opposing quarterback does has time and he takes a shot deep, how much of us can we say, oh, yeah, we have confidence that it's either an incomplete pass or a batted ball? No, we know that if Jimmy Ward's back there, there's a chance at a big play. That's the one where I would say you have a clear problem and you did not choose to fix this. With the offensive line, it's a little harder. There's 5 areas where you need to look at. There's scheme that you need to look at. There's play calling that you need to look at. And those all tie into having a good offense, keeping your quarterback upright. Something like a deep safety getting consistently beat, we could patch that up. I mean, we talked about Justin Simmons already.
I know. Yeah. I think that's what annoys me about the Texans this year is that, like, we knew safety was a problem. They brought in Bullock, and they were moving, Petrie down. But Petrie hasn't been great. When he's out there covering guys in the slot, like, it's just not his strength. We knew Jimmy Ward was going to be a problem, and instead of replacing him, they gave him a year contract extension. Like, I was like, well, what are we? Like, that's where I go back to the Desmond King, Steven Nelson kind of stuff is like, is there something to being boys with D'Amico? And that goes back to the question also of, like, will they fire Bobby Slowick? Of, like, if you're just on D'Amico's team, like, and he's known you for a while, like, you might have immunity from some of these, big issues. I think for me, like, the biggest thing that they can fix to make them a good football team and not an average to below average team is just stop being like, just do the little things right.
Okay.
I mean, look at the last 2 weeks. Nico Collins has 2 touchdowns, call back for touchdowns, or call back on penalties.
Horrible.
The Detroit Lions game, on the second possession after the first Jared Goff interception, Joe Mixon has the big run down to the 5-yard line, and then Juice Scruggs gets a big holding penalty. He's had a couple of those this year in recent weeks since he moved to left guard. He's really struggling there, and the amount of holding penalties I think is showing through of what that is. So that's really the one for me, is like, in terms of being held accountable for your actions and what you're doing, they just have so many unfortunate time penalties. That's something easy to fix up. Like, that's just, mental mistakes. Like, stop having those. It just feels like the Texans can be on a better path, because if Nico scores those 2 touchdowns, we feel better about last week or 2 weeks ago, and we feel better about last week because they might have won that game.
And if your offense shows up in the second half, I mean, we're feeling different about Detroit. We're feeling different about Green Bay. Those 2 games alone, we will feel entirely different about this Houston Texans team if they came out with the dub. And the sad thing is that they had the lead in both of the games. They had moments where they looked like a complimentary football team, and then boom, they showed their inexperience. They showed that they are in year 2, second-year coach, second-year OC, second-year quarterback, and maybe that's where we got kind of a little too excited, right? We just thought it was just going to magically click all together. These boys, they did so well in year 1, they could just grow on that note. But other than that, man, when I look at this game, I look at the offensive line. I look at Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen on the opposite side. Are they having a good season sack-wise? No, but they could still ruin your game plan, because that's what we've seen from this offensive line. So I'm kind of worried. We mentioned about how confident we are going into this game. I feel like it's hard to be confident with what we've seen the past year.
Yeah.
So until this team shows me that they could play 4 quarters, they could score in the second half, then I could say, oh, I felt different about this Houston Texans team.
Man, it's so funny how far a second half touchdown, the opening drive of the third quarter, would go for the fan base. Just like because the week before, it's a defensive touchdown and then a late touchdown from Joe Mixon, but it's kind of garbage time at that point against the Cowboys.
They turned the ball over on 4th down.
Yeah, so it almost doesn't hit the same, right? A sustained, 8 to 10 play drive at the start of the third quarter would go a long way for all of us to just be like, whew. And honestly, and sometimes in football, we see this in sports, that's all you need.
Just
one drive, and maybe the monkey gets off the back and they just feel a little bit better, because I know we would all feel better if they did that. At least we could come to do shows on Monday and do podcasts and YouTube live shows and hey, at least they scored in the second half.
Yeah.
But now let's start there. Feels like we're not asking for a lot, but they're making it seem like a lot.
I just don't know how this Houston Texans offense can collapse just week in and week out in the second half.
It's crazy.
And it's like they have so much energy and momentum in quarters 1 and 2. Then after halftime, I don't know what happens. It's just an entirely new Houston Texans team. And, that's why a lot of fans have lost hope and lost faith going into the rest of the season, because of what they showed them. And, when you hear D'Amico Ryan say, oh, there's a narrative that we're not a good football team, D'Amico, I'm sorry. The narrative is your offense is horrible in the second half. That's what's facts.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why some fans are kind of upset. It's we don't want to say what the problem is, right? After the game, D'Amico said, our offense put up enough points.
That annoyed me.
And I'm like, are you serious?
That's the first time I've ever been really annoyed. There's I can't believe that there's cheesy sometimes stuff or rah. But that was the first time where I was I do not agree. I do not agree with that. The defense, yes, gave up big plays, gave up touchdowns, but your quarterback, the best player supposedly on the team, is also making critical mistakes. And it's I get you don't want to be critical of CJ in there, but your offense let you down.
Yeah.
The penalty to stop the Nico touchdown, it let you down. It's okay to say those things. I guess they don't want to.
There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, the offense hasn't playing up to its, standard, up to our potential. The fact that we lost games with 8 sacks against the Tennessee Titans, the fact that we lost the game picking off Jared Goff 5 times, it's the defense did its job. And now we're looking at the offense, and we could say the offense has lost us majority of the L's that we have on our record. So we understand what the issue is, or we think we understand what the
Yeah.
issue is. And it's like, for some reason, when he gets up there to NRG, we see that the sense of urgency on the offensive side is not the same as the defensive side, right? We have no issues in terms of the defense. We know day in, day out, they're going to be ready. At any given moment, they could take over the game. We have not felt that way at all from this offense. Hell, we haven't felt that way since last year.
No,
about the offense.
For sure. I mean, like we know the defense's weaknesses, like the deep ball and stuff like that. Like, it's going to hurt the Texans once or twice. But, like, I'm also not expecting the Texans or anyone to be perfect in a football game. Like, I'm not expecting someone to go out there and dominate for 4 quarters and have no issues. Like, that's unreasonable. It's unreasonable. Like, it's, even like the Detroit game is a great example. Like, yes, while Detroit scores 13 points in the 4th quarter and wins that game, they had 5 picks. Like, the Texans, the offense could have put up 50 in that game. Like, they could have scored on all those possessions. Instead, they were going 3 and out, or CJ was throwing terrible picks, and it's the offense is definitely to blame. Yeah, I think like that's the long-term issue is really the second half stuff. Like, because there's no easy explanation for it, so that's why there's no easy answer for it. Because I don't get it.
Me either.
I the one Bobby Slowick clip that I know Paul pissed him off so much, and it made me mad too. When Bobby Slowick was asked about it 2 weeks ago, and he said football is football, and then he said football is hard. It's like, no, duh. But it's your job as the offensive coordinator to figure out why these teams make so many adjustments. Because the Texans are statistically one of the best teams in the NFL in the first half.
Yeah, like the 4th, I believe.
It's 3rd or 4th. And then they might be last in the NFL. And
how does that happen?
Exactly, that's crazy. Like, it's illogical. Like, it's such a rarity. I'm not sure we'll ever see it again. Like, straight up, like, to see a team be that good in the first half and then be that bad in the second half.
This second half offense is going to scar us for like the next 3 years. Like, we're not going to be comfortable at all going into quarters 3 and 4 based off this year too, with all the expectations that we had.
Dude, CJ's going to go like 2 weeks without throwing a pass. Like, they're going to go like 2 weeks without throwing a touchdown or scoring in the second half in like 3 years. And we're like, well, remember back in 2024?
Like, oh, we're back. We're back to this.
Remember back in 2024 when they had to fire their offensive coordinator? Maybe we're headed back there. Yeah. No, this is going to be a scarring moment for Texans fans, I would say.
And the only way they can get out of it, man, is they themselves, which is, why we have faith in D'Amico that he could have confidence in his guys to figure it out, right? We're not questioning his decisions on Bobby Slowick just yet, but I would say the honeymoon is over. And I would say that, like, a lot of us are starting to question some of the decisions that he has made, some of the decisions that he hasn't made in regards to this Houston Texans team. And when we talk about the team, dude, it's interesting because there aren't multiple issues with the Houston Texans. Right? On the defense, like you mentioned, it's the fact that you could throw deep on us and we could give up a play. From the offense, we could say, oh, if it's not penalties, it's not being able to, keep up the quarterback. If it's not that, it's him throwing the INTs, or it's the game plan. Like, the offense is such a mess right now. I feel like there has to be a veteran presence in there, man, just to keep everyone, on the right ship. I know what an offense looks like, and right now what we're doing is not it.
Yeah, honestly, it might be Joe Mixon. Like, that might be the guy that they got to rely on because, like, he's the most proven veteran at this point on the Houston Texans. Once Stephon Diggs got hurt, like, he's just the only guy that's been to a Super Bowl of anyone. I guess maybe Shaq Mason. So Shaq Mason and Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's the only ones performing to have that voice in the room. You said something interesting there. Honeymoon. We'll do that. We'll get into that next. Where are we at in the honeymoon phase with some of the other people on the Houston Texans? Besides your offensive coordinator, your head coach, your quarterback, your GM. We'll do that next year. Broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Brought to you by our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
Back here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, Joe and Ruben from 3 to 7. So we got another hour and a half left to go in the show today. We'll bring you the John and Lance's interview, or John and Dell's interview, with Selvin Young here in the next segment. But Ruben, you mentioned the honeymoon phase being over for Bobby Slowick. Where are you at with D'Amico? Because obviously, Paul kind of went a little mini viral, I would say.
I like it.
In Houston, kind of questioning the ceiling of D'Amico Ryans. I think it was a very fair way that he asked it. Like, he wasn't asking if D'Amico's a bad coach or anything. He was just asking, like, can he become Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, being that, pantheon Andy Reid of coaches. But where do you think we're at as a fan base with, like, the honeymoon phase of D'Amico?
I think the honeymoon phase with D'Amico is starting to come to an end. Once these offensive problems in the second half started to really, show its ugly face every week, every single second half, then fans started questioning, like, oh, okay, why isn't anything being done? So I feel like the honeymoon phase is maybe still there in terms of, fans believe in D'Amico. They still think 100% he's the guy.
Yeah.
However, it will be wrong for us not to start questioning some of his decisions when we're almost a year and a half and more than a year and a half in, and we could both agree this Houston Texas team is not where it needs to be. So it's dwindling, but there's still a little blind optimism there for D'Amico Ryans.
Yeah, I think so. I think it can come back even in a way. The number one way, or the way officially like that door closes, I think it does center around Bobby Slowick right now. The fan base has made up their mind.
Okay.
Unless you win a Super Bowl or get to the AFC Championship game, I don't think anyone's changing their mind about Bobby Slowick, right?
Agree.
Everyone wants him out.
Agree.
So D'Amico makes a decision to bring him back next year as the head coach of the team and the CEO of this team, basically. I think that's when the honeymoon phase ends for D'Amico Ryans. That, like, people are going to – because then anything that goes wrong with the offense, like you're saying, like, we'll, like, fully blame will go to D'Amico. It's like – and some of that's happening now. Yeah. But I think there's still a majority of the fan base is, like, understanding that they're not going to fire a coach midseason. It is weird because, like, this isn't the Bears. This isn't the Saints. This isn't the Jets. It's a team that's going to win their division.
Yeah.
And, I honestly, I couldn't tell you the last time, besides Buffalo last year. And even then, Buffalo had to go on a run at the end of the season to win their division. Like, I could never have told you the last time an OC got fired or a DC got fired on a team that was very clearly going to win their division this late in the season. So I think with D'Amico, it's that. It just depends on what happens into the offseason and how people, like, really view him and think about him. CJ, I think, personally, I don't think we're even close to the honeymoon phase ending yet. Like, I don't think – I know he's struggled a couple games, but the large majority of the fan base is still pretty confident he's a top 5 quarterback or can be in the NFL. And, like, while he isn't right now and he has – is going through a sophomore slump, like, I do think that honeymoon phase is going to last for at least through next season. Yeah. Before anyone wants to be, like, super critical. Right now, everyone's being fair, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. I think when you talk about, the problems for the Houston Texans, CJ Stroud is like the 3rd or 4th point on my list before I get to it. What he did in year 1 was special. When you have stats that compare you to Tom Brady, to Joe Montana, that tells us that you are indeed special. And then just hearing the way he talked, to us as a year 1 quarterback, a franchise guy, we believe in CJ. The honeymoon's still there. It's hard to really say he's having a sophomore slump for some Houston Texas fans because of how the rest of the offense has been playing. So the honeymoon's still there for CJ. We 100% believe in CJ. Well, I do at least.
Yeah.
To me, CJ and D'Amico are the 2 most important people in this organization besides ownership and Nick.
Nick, where are you at with him? Honeymoon phase.
Oh, man.
Because it was already kind of low, like, going into last season.
It was going low, and
then he drafted CJ and Will, and everyone was like, oh, like, what's going on?
CJ, Will, Tank Dell.
Yeah.
Like, there have been a lot of great moments for Nick Caserio, and there have been a lot of things that haven't planned out. Right now, we're looking at the Dalton Schultz's contract, and like, oh my gosh, that is a big overpay. Right now,
Yeah.
we are missing George Fant. Right, we would have much have George Fant instead of Tadej Saba. However, I think with the honeymoon with Nick, it has been over, and we are just now criticizing not criticizing, but discussing every single move that he makes. Right, you could say how much money he gives out to some players is, doesn't make sense, or the 3-year contracts, the 2-year increments that he loves to talk about. Yeah, I think we're done with with the honeymoon phase for Nick Caserio. We're just now trying to see him put this team together, and he's had some great moments, and there's other moments where you could point out and say, yeah, he didn't do too good at it.
Yeah, no, I definitely I do agree with that. Like, because even think back to the before the was it the day of or like the week before? It was like the week or two before they drafted CJ and Will. There was that weird rumor floated out there by Mike Lombardi that they were going to replace Nick Caserio after the draft. And I remember then, like, the large kind of consensus was everyone was like, sure. Like, it wasn't, nobody was upset that it was happening, and no one was like demanding that it was also happening. Everyone was just kind of, yeah, okay, like if that happens, that makes sense. Like with where the Texans are at, like it is what it is. So that's where you kind of knew, and then none of that was his fault. The Davis Mills era, he tore down his roster. He had to. I do think we're at the point where like the fan base is kind of. I'm surprised with how little blame Caserio gets. Like I thought they would get more. The offensive line, like everything's kind of focused on Bobby Slowick right now. I feel like, and a little, almost to the point where I'll be honest, Ruben, I think it's a little unfair.
Oh,
like,
wow!
I think like the offensive line coach, the players themselves, the GM, it's kind of all being focused on one guy, and I'm like, I just feel like there's more blame to go around a little bit.
And I think the reason why that happens is because when we talked about a Houston Texans free agency, we were always known not to make the big moves, not to go out there and spend. Well, when we saw Nick Caserio do that, we were like, okay, you finally did what no other GM has ever done.
Yep.
You see the big extension to Shaq Mason, Titus Laramie. If you don't know, those were the first 3 players to get a 3-year contract extension from general manager Nick. It was always 1 to 2 years, right? We always talk about those 1 and 2 year contracts. So it showed that he believed in those 3 guys, and unfortunately, now we got to the point where we just can't trust them to block CJ. So it was like he did his way in a sense, bringing in the players, spending the capital. It's just they're not a good unit right now. One of the worst units in pass protection.
Yeah, and even then, like I don't hate the moves he made.
I don't
like.
either.
Juice Scruggs has been okay. Jared Patterson he's probably been better than Scruggs.
Yeah.
Kenyon Green's obviously his worst pick, but like look what's happened to the run game since he's been out. Like he's been, the run game it's worked really great with Kenyon Green, and it's been 2 out of 3 games so far, I believe it is. It's been really bad. So even then, that looks like a weird one itself, where it's maybe and that was the feedback coming in out of Texas A&M of all places, as we're here in College Station, was that he wasn't a great pass blocker. So he never really developed in the way that I think they projected him to. But I'll be curious, like how the fan base, like if this season continues to go the way I think it's going to, which I do think will be a little bit different than what you mentioned earlier. Would not like pencil them in for that, that division round win.
Yeah, no,
because right now it's Baltimore.
Yeah,
like if it's Pittsburgh, it's different. Like if it's Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, I think they win that game at home.
Yeah, you could be Mr. Unlimited.
Yeah, unlimited. Still like the weirdest video of all time, from a guy like out of nowhere, made no sense. All right, and he also has the one where is that the one where he's in his bed?
No, that was when he was like just in he was in his living room.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
but there's another one where he's in bed with his wife. It's also super strange. What a weird,
just a corny guy. But some people like to live their life by the cob.
Yeah, that's very true. All right, he is Ruben. My name's Joe. You can find us on ESPN 97.5's Twitch and YouTube channel as well. We're broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery. They've been sponsoring all of our coverage this week of the Texas A&M and Texas football rivalry that returns tomorrow. So in honor of that, when we come back, we will play an interview with Selvin Young, the former running back for the University of Texas, and him giving his thoughts on this game this weekend. That's next.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
All right, back here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, our coverage of the A&M and Texas rivalry returning this week has been brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, Enchanted Rock Vodka, and Texas Ranger Whiskey as well. I just took my shot. It was very, very good. I'm only taking the one, though. I poured them together, though, so I just took them at once.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I took the 2 shots in one, Ruben.
Nice.
All right, when we get back, we're not when we get back. Can't talk right now. Coming up right now, Selvin Young, former Texas running back. He was on with John and Dell on Wednesday morning. Here he is talking about his emotions seeing this great rivalry once again return.
You know, it's a little different from those early morning kickoffs we had. You know, right after Thanksgiving, they would catch us fat full and get us down there in Aggie land. But I'm excited to see this rivalry back. We've been wanting it for a long time. You know, we all got a lot of A&M friends, and A&M friends got a lot of Texas friends, and so it's finally time to get that battle back brewing.
What's I say the A&M game. In your years at Texas, what's the one play that comes to mind when you think of that game?
Man, that's kind of tough. I mean, it's a few plays. Growing up, watching football. I mean, Texas, I've always been a running football team, and I remember watching Cedric Benson just run through A&M like, it was just nothing. I mean, I really enjoyed watching Cedric Benson. He got up for that game more than he got up for any game that I can remember. And he always made me remember, hey, we don't lose to A&M.
And is there one play that you made that sticks out for you?
Me personally?
Yeah.
No, not at all. I can't remember that one play that I made. That sticks out. I remember having a bunch of fun out there, though.
Damn, man.
Yeah.
A&M, the man can't even remember playing against you. The man won a national title, John.
Hey, it's the A&M game.
He had bigger games on the schedule. Look, I get it, Selvin. The A&M game. But you guys at that point were rolling. So, I mean, beating up on Colorado, beating up on winning against USC. He had other things in store, John.
Oh, no, no question. He had a big career. There's no question about that. Are you going to the game?
I'm still deciding. I got a buddy of mine who's thinking about going. Vince is thinking about he said he's going to go. He's trying to get me to go down there. I got a good buddy, John Daspit's wanting to go down there, so I may go down there with him.
Yeah, I know you're doing a lot of stuff with John Daspit. How's that going?
It's going pretty good. I mean, it's actually cool to have a lawyer who actually cares and likes to get out there. I mean, we was out there handing out turkeys the other day. He's excited about it. We have a little assembly line and families pull up at RSVP that say that they could use a little extra help this Thanksgiving, and he's right there with us. We loading people up with turkeys and having fun and enjoying it and putting smiles on people's faces. So, I really enjoy a lot of the things that he's doing in the community. I mean, we got a bunch of stuff coming up for Christmas. I may get back with you and see if we can give away some bikes and help some families, some of your listeners out there that could, know some people that could use some help.
That's awesome. No, absolutely. We'll be here for you. Absolutely. Love that. Love that. Yeah, John Daspit absolutely does stuff in the community, and he does stuff for college football as well. He gives a lot of money to college football too, and I know you're in the middle of that, and that's got to be fun seeing guys get paid. You never took a dime when you were playing college football, so it's got to be nice to see all these guys out here making some money now, right?
Exactly. Actually, never took a dime. We'd always put our coins together, rub them in, and make a little something out of it. I remember myself, Casey Stutter, Lyle Sinline, we would go eat on Thursdays, and we would always see who was going to pay the bill, and we always ended up putting it up together. But, now these guys these running backs can take their whole team out to eat now with the checks that they're getting. But it's actually pretty cool to see. It's great to be able to, especially go to my university and, put some money in those guys' hands and, introduce them to the business side of the world and show them how things are going and how it's supposed to go. And, and enjoy, putting money in those guys' hands. That's something I always wish we could do. Hell, I wish they can go back and give us a check, for some of the stuff we did, but it's in the window.
You mentioned Selvin, you mentioned the running backs, and now there's a big injury early. C.J. Baxter went down, and there are questions about how Texas and that running back room was going to respond. They've responded pretty well. What do you think of Wisner and Blue so far this year?
Before I get on them, as much as I'm impressed with those guys, I'm impressed with Choice. The running back coach. I mean, that guy, he has the ability to get those guys ready to go. Most teams, when you got a lot of, running back by committee, most guys just don't buy into it. But each time that ball is snapped, I mean, those guys, they are going and they're running and gunning. You get a young guy coming in there running like that. You get Blue, who I think, he's the leader of that group. I mean, he's shifty, quick, and fast. I'm actually proud of those guys. If I could say one thing to them right now, I always carried that football like it was my granny's heart, and that's one thing that I would never let go or let on the ground or drop. And so I hope these guys kind of take that into account and carry that football like it's their granny's heart and don't let that thing on the ground no more. I'm sick of seeing that. But other than that, I mean, this offensive line is powerful. These guys are moving their feet. These guys are not getting contact, and when they do, I mean, I like the way Wisner lowers those pads and runs through that contact. I mean, he's not shy about getting hit. He's not even thinking about it. He's just running. So I'm impressed with these running backs. I think, by committee right now, I think this is enough for us to get done what we need to get done.
He's talking about the front fumbling problem, John, and they've got Jaden Blue walking around campus, high point. He's got high and tight walking around. He's got a football in his hand. He did interviews yesterday with the ball because fumbling has been a problem. So we'll see if that all that work translates to Saturday against A&M.
There's no worse feeling than you're on the ground and somebody's laying on top of you, and that ball is right there, and you can't get to it. The worst feeling in the world.
It is the worst feeling ever. One of my greatest things, I mean, I was in Denver, I didn't get to play too long, but forever I had the record for the most carries in a row without a fumble. That was one thing that I pride myself on. So I never get too hyped or too excited when I'm watching the game, but that's the one thing that'll make me come out of my pants, seeing that ball on the ground.
You need to give Tashard some help with that, to get those guys out from fumbling. Stop fumbling right now. Selvin Young with us here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, Texas Ranger Whiskey as well, along with Enchanted Rock Vodka. Selvin Young, let's talk a little bit about this game. Win or lose, Texas is in the playoff. Win or lose, right? Of course, you want to beat A&M. Do you want another shot at Georgia, or are you worried about, playing another game before the playoff and risking injury?
No, not at all. I mean, at this point in time of year, you're supposed to be an all-well machine. So whoever you face, they just come in and lay down and take the beating like they need to take it. I would love to do that to Georgia. I'd love to see anybody who feels like they're the best right now, because I think that's what you measure yourself up against. I think we had our opportunities against Georgia. We had a quarterback that hadn't really played a little bit, and he's coming in a little rusty. That front, seven that those guys got. I mean, that defensive line kind of got after us, and so I'm pretty sure our O-line is looking at their chops right now to get after those guys. And, hey, I do think we knocked those guys out early. Or at least we get there, beat them, and we get a bye. If we see them again, we see them again. But, I think one game at a time. We take care of A&M this weekend. We get to see Georgia in the SEC championship. And I think that's how things should go. We should take care of those and get that first round bye.
Selvin Young here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Yeah, that George, you want a little bit of revenge. There's no question about that. And you want that first round bye. You get to wait all the way until New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. That's a lot of fun. How do you like being in the SEC in the first year?
I like it. We get a lot of slack of guys saying, "Hey, you coming to the big boys," and I don't think they understand. We are the big boys. We are Texas, and no matter where we at and where we play, with a coach like what we got right now, Coach Sark, I mean, this guy's is firing. He knows his team. The team knows him. They love him to death. He's a great man, and he's molded these seniors. I'm so proud of these seniors. These guys walked the other day. They're going out in the world to be men, and he's just not raising athletes. So he's raising men, and that's what I like about it, because that translates to the field more than anything. Taking care of your responsibility, being where you're supposed to be. Being on time and paying attention. And he got these guys buying in, and I think that's going to translate to dominating the SEC for as long as he's there. So hey, I hope we just give this guy an unlimited lifetime agreement and not play any games there. But I'm looking forward to this SEC. It's better football. It's more competition for us. I'm actually tired of seeing guys leave Texas and go to these other teams. I mean, I think Texas is where they should go. Free from home. So I'm looking forward to the future of this SEC.
And how much do you hate that Oklahoma is struggling this year?
Hate is not in my heart. I'm gonna have to say I love to see that. Because hate is not in my heart. So I have to say hate is love. And but I like to see good football. It's a lot of great history with Oklahoma. I'm glad they came along with us. But hey, I'm not worried about anybody struggling. I just like to see us succeed. I wanted us to have a perfect season. I want those guys to match us, try to do what we did. But hey, it's more than one way to skin a cat, and we got opportunities coming.
So now that the rivalry is back, which one's bigger then and now, Oklahoma or A&M for you?
A&M, by triple. I mean, you should see how it's going out here right now. I just played in a golf tournament in Lakeside the other day, and it was Texas versus Texas A&M, like member deal. And I mean, those guys are warriors and going at it. And it was fun to watch. Me and Vince actually went out there and played, and we just watching these guys. Texas, they find ways to compete in everything. You see two guys walking out of the bathroom, and one shoots the paper towel in a trash can, and an A&M guy goes and grabs it and says, "Hey, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to shoot it." And I'm watching it. I'm like, it's deeper than football. It's just part of our life, our way, and I love it. There's no rivalry bigger than this.
Thanks again to Selvin Young for joining John and Dell earlier this week. We got one more interview to play for you guys at 6:30. Figured we'd wrap it up with an A&M, a former A&M player and Houston Texan, Steve McKinney. He was on with John and Dell on Wednesday morning, or on Tuesday morning as well, I believe it was. And all that available on our YouTube channel and on podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, John and Lance, Killer Bees, Gallant George, all of that, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get it, you can find it. So when we get back, our final thoughts on the Texans game this weekend. Do they win? Do they cover? What happens? We'll give our final thoughts on that next before we talk more A&M and Texas here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery. Back here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, broadcasting live from inside the Angry Elephant in College Station, sponsored by Rebecca Creek Distillery, and we will get back into that game here coming up in the next segment, and we will give our final thoughts on that, and then a little bit more on the NFL towards the end of the show. But right now, let's get back into the Houston Texans for one final segment this show today. First of all, Ruben, great job today. Thank you for joining me. I'll say that again at the end of the show.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
much
you,
appreciate
man.
it.
Nervous.
I understand. I remember, first of all, a road show is always a little different too because there's people watching you a little different. So far, we've got lucky with no one coming up trying to talk to us. It probably just jinxed it while we're on the air because that does happen frequently. But so far, we've been good to go. So final thoughts here on the Texans game this weekend. What do you think the final score of this game will be? How do you think the Texans win this game?
Final score, let's go 27-13.
27-13. Okay.
I think the Houston Texans are still going to win this game, but what I am looking for is how they win this game. If we have another second half where we only put up 6 points, no offensive touchdown, then it's going to be the same thing we've been talking about the last week. Let's say you do get 1 to 2 touchdowns in the second half, and it's something different than what we've seen. We're going to say, look, maybe it was just the Jacksonville Jaguars why you did this. However, this is a sign that you're taking a step in the right direction of getting your offense back on track. Now, how do they do that, man? You got to keep C.J. Stroud, from being sacked. Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen's time. They're not having as good of a season getting to the quarterback, but they could still ruin your day. On the defensive side, I don't care if it's Mac Jones. I don't care if it's Trevor Lawrence. You got to get to the quarterback. And I feel like Will Anderson Jr., Daniil Hunter are starting to come into their own. They're both top 5.
Which is crazy.
For sacks, which is insane. And they're just getting started, which is why, why I feel so upset about this team is because I know how elite this front four is with the addition of Danico Autry back. You could ruin anyone's day.
Yep.
Offense needs to get on track. So for me, that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm going to go 27-13. I think Joe Mixon has a solid game on the ground. You cannot have him rush for 22 yards again. He's been your game-changing running back, and that's how I think the Houston Texans pull out a dub.
Yeah, I think they're going to win this weekend, too. The line, surprisingly, has moved from 5.5 all the way down to 3.5. I just saw it.
Oh, wow.
So it's moved quite a bit from where it opened on Sunday when the lines were first posted. So that's quite a change. I think, obviously, the more and more they got reassurances that Trevor Lawrence was playing, I think you're seeing that. But that also means to me that the public is probably betting a little bit more on the Jags to cover this game. When it was a 4.5 point spread, I think when Paul and Sean and I made our picks on Wednesday for our pick 6, I think that's where it was at, was 4.5. So we've seen it move another full point. I think they cover that. I'm very close to yours. I got 27-20.
Okay.
But my guess is it's going to be like a late Jacksonville touchdown that makes it 27-20, thus making our scores essentially the same thing.
Is Trevor playing or not?
Trevor's going to play.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's questionable, but the way that they've treated, Mac Jones before this, and then now that he's listed as questionable, I'm pretty confident Trevor Lawrence is going to play. If it's Mac Jones,
you don't even have to score in the second half.
34-10, because he's going to give you the ball. Trevor might give you the ball too, but Mac Jones is going to give you the ball.
When it comes to Tila, I just don't understand why Jacksonville would throw him out there.
That's a good point.
You just paid him. Your O-line's just as bad as the Texans.
Yeah, if not worse.
Your season's done.
Yeah.
If you just want to be petty and try to ruin our season, that's fine. But you're putting your quarterback who you just paid at risk.
Yeah, I think if I'm Doug Peterson, I almost need Trevor Lawrence to play to try to save my job. Because it's like, it's not a done deal that they move on. I mean, we're all assuming it. But like we talked about earlier, I thought they would have fired Doug Peterson weeks ago.
Yeah.
I really did not think that we would still be having this conversation at Doug Peterson at this point in the season because things had gone so bad. The way he was acting with the media, where you could just you don't typically get a lot with the way a coach talks to the media. You get nothing out of D'Amico. Yeah. I give 6'10" their credit because I like Mark Vandermeer and John Harris a lot. When they do the coffee with the coach, D'Amico's a lot more open with them than he is anyone else when he's just talking to in a press conference setting. But Doug Peterson's getting snippy with them, and you can tell he's getting very defensive of his actions based on the questions he's being asked. So if he's going to have a chance to save his job, he needs Trevor Lawrence to come back from this injury and perform really well. And that starts with a win this weekend for them. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I was confident last week. Were we wrong? Yes. The Texans had a bad week. Will Levis was, besides the sack plays, every single play on offense was working for them in the first half. I don't think that'll happen again. And I think I'm gonna take what D'Amico said and try to think that is going to bring value to the situation. Is that he's pissed and he wants that to linger a little bit. And I think too far much the Texans have just moved on from these games, even when they're winning. Earlier in the season, you would talk about, well, we won. It's when when people were questioning Kenyon Green, they had 6 wins on the season. He was, well, we have 6 wins. We have 6 wins with Kenyon Green as the left guard. That annoyed me quite a bit because it just feels like that's a defense mechanism that is just kind of wrong. It's like, well, we can see they can't block. You can win all the games you want, but your quarterback's not protected. So I think they get the win this weekend, and I don't think it'll be that, the score, like I said, will be within 7, I think. But in the end, I think we'll look at this game and say, it wasn't that competitive.
No, 100% agree. I think this is one where we see the Houston Texans take care of business. The question is, do they play 2 quarters of good football or do they play 4? And if they play 4 quarters, then good job. If they play 2, then we're back having the same conversation once again. And then we're looking at our head coach, D'Amico, and we're like, hey, against probably one of the worst defenses in the NFL. That's secondary for Jacksonville. I think they're 31th in quarterback rating allowed. If this offense does not get it going against Jacksonville, man, we're going to have some bigger things to talk about.
Yeah, I think that is there. So what does it take to get Bobby Sloak fired after this game? I'll try to paint a picture.
Go ahead.
I think the Jacksonville Jaguars obviously win this game. I think the Texans scored 2 touchdowns in the first half and then score again none in the second half, and they ended up losing 28, 24. So I think the game can still be close, but if against Jacksonville you don't score, I think there's still that outside shot that this game, because of what you just pointed out, is the game that does Bobby Sloak in.
And it's sad that we have to have this conversation, but like we mentioned before, this whole season they've showed us what this Houston Texan offense is. And you just got embarrassed against Tennessee. You got embarrassed on 2 of your primetime games against Detroit, against New York. You get embarrassed at Jacksonville on Sunday. Your offense goes stagnant in the second half. How can you not make a change at coordinator? You know what's crazy? Knock on wood. If it does happen and we don't see a change, everyone's going to be up in just arms, man. They are going to be so upset.
I agree. You got to think that they're going to figure it out in this game, and it is the benefit of the doubt. I think that's one time where I think it benefits me to have a little bit of it, not being from Houston, even though I feel like I've adapted the city very well in the 10 years that I've been here, and I understand these teams because I feel like I'm rooting for the same teams that I grew up rooting for. They're very similar. These 2 cities of Chicago and Houston, when you really go through the struggles, it's very similar. But I just have more faith in C.J. Stroud than I've ever had in any quarterback I've ever watched play.
Yeah.
And I think Texans fans should feel that way too. And that's why until it's really, really broken, I'm just going to believe that, that they find a way to win this game. So 2 more questions here that we'll kind of go through before we take a break. The first one's something that Paul and I on Gallant George have discussed quite a bit. What satisfies you this weekend? Because it's not just a win, right? We expect them to win. Is 2 touchdowns and a win in the second half enough for you? Do you want to see them just boat race? Jacksonville win by 30. What satisfies you to make you feel overall more optimistic about the Texans? Because it is just Jacksonville.
Let's say you put up 2 touchdowns in the second half, you get the dub, and maybe you manage another field goal, then 100% we are on the right track. Great job. This is your first full quarters of offense all year. However, the realistic of that happen is, it's kind of slim. So let's go 1 touchdown in the third quarter. Let's go a field goal middle of the fourth. Right, you are showing baby steps of you trying to figure it out. That's that's what I realistically see happening. But if you go out there 2 tutties, a field goal in the second half, where has this been all year, Bobby Sloak? And I think that's once we see that big explosion in the second half, we're just going to be saying, where has this been all season? I think that's when it just connects for this Houston Texan offense.
I'm with you, man. I think that's right. I think that's right on the money. Because give me some baby steps heading into the latest bye week ever. I cannot believe that we have teams on buys in week 14. It's so far into the season. But give me something where like I can logically say the Texans did something versus the Jacksonville Jaguars to build off of, to look at during the bye week, to say, okay, now when we play Miami, Kansas City, and Baltimore within 10 days of each other, we actually have something that we can believe in for the Houston Texans organization, that they're going to fix their second half problems. Other side, the very, 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 very negative side of this. Playoff panic if they lose? You panicking?
Oh, absolutely.
Or are you still
You
convinced
can't
that
go back-to-back
Okay.
losses with Tennessee and Jacksonville, but like we mentioned, the sad thing is they could still probably make the playoffs.
I know.
With them still losing against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Our division is that bad, but we've already seen this story before. So it's like, do I want to see it again? I would just rather take the draft pick. Let's get a new OC in the offseason. That's what happens if you could potentially lose on, this Sunday against Jacksonville, but you lose this game and the sky's falling down. You think it was bad losing against the Tennessee Titans?
this
It
game
is
will be
going
way
to be
worse.
horrible if we lose on Sunday against Jacksonville. Remember the last time we lost to them? UCF Jaguar posts a minute-long video. Trevor Lawrence is better than CJ. A million-view clip. And what happened to Jacksonville? We're seeing the result.
Yeah, he's been real quiet this year. The AFC South has some weird fans, man. You have UCF Jaguar. You have that Titan fan with the really bad teeth who just swears a lot.
Morocco. And then we got
and then you have Seth, the singing Colts fan. Like there's some. I'm glad. I don't think the Texans have like a guy
that one guy
that like we don't have anyone that does anything like that. Maybe we need one. Like maybe that's what Texans fans are missing. They need that really weird fan
that just does something just dumb every single
we
week.
have fans that are interesting that are at the games, but they're not like these like social media kind of stars all of a sudden. The only thing with the Colts schedule is I pulled it up here. They play the Pats, the Broncos, the Titans, the Giants, and the Jaguars their last 5 games of the season. So if you do lose this game, in which the Texans should be favored against Miami, I would guess. Since that game's at home and the way Miami played against Green Bay, I know that's an outdoor game and where they struggle. And Tua did not accomplish his goal of killing the narrative like he hoped. But like if I set the over under at 2.5 wins the rest of the year for the Texans,
I'll take it.
Take the over?
Yeah, I'll take the over.
I think so. I think I lean that way too. Like I think they win this weekend. They beat Tennessee in the last game of the year. Even though we just saw the Titans, like I think that's more of a one-off than it is an actual realization of who the Texans are. And I think they win one game of Miami, Kansas City, and Baltimore. Pretty confident it'll be Miami. But I think they get 3 more wins this year and, secure their spot in the playoff. And then either Baltimore or Pittsburgh, most likely, or maybe the Chargers will be coming to town for the first round of the playoffs, which will be crazy. Hopefully not Baltimore.
Yeah, no, hopefully not Baltimore.
Hopefully Pittsburgh.
Yeah, hopefully Pittsburgh. I could be Mr. Unlimited any day of the week, I feel like, with his defensive line. But no, a lot of things could potentially happen if you lose on Sunday, which is why you need to go in there, take care of business, show us you are a mature team, show us you're not the same old Houston Texans. Don't go get embarrassed and we're just looking at each other saying what happened. Handle business. Don't put yourself in this situation, man. And let's try to get this right. There's still time. And that's the thing. With the bye week being this late into the season, you get a fresh breath of air. You get to get healthy. And then you get a look at this murderous row in 3 games in 10 days.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what that's going to be like. It's a crazy schedule for the Houston Texans this year. We knew it was going to be hard when we knew the names, but then seeing how they actually piece it together for the Houston Texans was something else. So he is Ruben. My name is Joe. We're here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, broadcasting live from inside the Angry Elephant. Thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery. Our final thoughts on A&M and Texas next before we play an interview with Steve McKinney from John and Dell earlier this week. That's next here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
Back here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, Joe and Ruben here with you. Obviously, catch me on Monday. We'll be back with our normal lineup Monday through Friday. I'll be with Paul from noon to 3. You catch Ruben every day on the 713 Houston Sports YouTube channel, as well on Bleacher Report for post-game shows, doing that as well. So, obviously, and then also our Twin Toros podcast that him and Nick Stevenson do, which drops every single Tuesday on the ESPN Houston YouTube channel. So we are now about 24 hours and 7 minutes officially from the kickoff time. And obviously, kickoff will be later than that. All the pageantry of college football beforehand. But we're right around the corner now from Texas to Texas A&M, happening not very far from where we are right now in College Station. And the University of Texas, let's see if I can find the line here. Texas is favored by 5 points, over under at 48.5. So Texas -5 versus Texas A&M. Now we had David Nuno from Texags on earlier. We were talking through the game and just, Marcel Reed and Quinn Ewers and how this game is going to play out. I'll be honest. I know A&M hasn't played good the last month. Ruben, I think I'm taking A&M to win this game.
Wow.
There's something about like the environment of College Station, the night game, everything.
I mean, you feel it, right?
I feel it. It just feels different. I don't know. It's nothing against Texas. I think Texas will still make the college football playoff. I think they'll still do some damage, but they haven't played a lot of good teams this year. So their schedule's kind of weak. Quinn Ewers hasn't really impressed me. I've been calling for the benching of him for Arch Manning for a majority of the season. And I just, feel like I've seen better stuff overall from Marcel Reed outside of the Quinn Ewers Florida game. So I'm going to take A&M. I'm going to take A&M to win this game.
I think I'm going to go with you. I feel like A&M just needs this more. With new head coach, Mr. Elko, sophomore quarterback, Marcel Reed, I think his, legs on the ground is going to be really underrated in this game. He's going to rely on them much more than what he needs to, in my opinion. Texas has a really good defense. I'm looking at, at Quinn Ewers, who's dealing with an ankle injury. His mobility is going to be very limited, and the Aggies have a pretty good front seven. If they put pressure on Ewers and they make him make some mistakes, this game is going to be very close. And then we talk about, look at where we're at. We're at College Station. That stadium, 100,000 plus, it's going to be rocky. Every time we come back into the show, we have Power by Kanye West going on. I know that's going to be there in the stadium loud.
I did that because they play it all the time. I think they play it before third downs. When they walk out, it's incredible. Like the whole stadium is just bumping when they're playing Power. So that's why I chose that for the open for the each hour today. What's your favorite? I said mine. College Station. Being there week 1 versus Notre Dame. Being at the Astros game when they Altuve hit the walk off against the Yankees to go to the World Series. Probably my top 2 sports environments I've ever been to. The Cubs lost the game, but I was at Game 3 of the World Series in 2016, which was just so cool to be at, to finally see something like that in person. What's your favorite sporting events you ever been to or watched? Or
yeah, I've gone to a couple Texas games. Unfortunately, we've taken the L in almost every single one that I've gone to. The memorable one I went to was Sunday Night Football against the Indianapolis Colts. Case Keenum first start as a rookie. Andre Johnson, 3 touchdowns in the first half. Battle red. I mean, atmosphere was electric. If you ever go to a Houston Dynamo game,
I've heard it's a good time.
Guys are, as soon as they open and whistle, even before that, they're up. And they don't stop until they leave that stadium. And I went to a couple games when they were back playing in the U of H stadium.
Yeah.
And when I'm saying everything was jam-packed, it felt like we had a championship-winning team. Of course, they were coming off of 2 straight MLS titles. Dynamo, dude, their crowd is legit.
I've heard it's awesome.
Fun.
Yeah. The only reason why I haven't gone is because everyone says it's uncomfortably hot for parts of the season. But yeah, that's on my to-do list this year is go to a Dynamo game. Haven't done it yet. I know Glenn Davis, of course, voice of the Dynamo on Apple TV and host of Soccer Matters here on ESPN 97.5 would be very upset with me if you heard that. But Yeah, I've heard Dynamo games are absolutely electric. I'm just hoping to be able to go to at least, and I'm not a huge soccer fan,
Yeah, me either.
but I got to find a way to go to one of the World Cup games. I know that's going to be like a can't miss bucket list item when the World Cup is here in Houston.
It's like Messi Ronaldo's last time in the World Cup, right?
Yeah, probably, yeah. And hopefully we'll get one of them here in Houston. That'd be sweet if we do. Or just Team USA in general. Like just, even if it's not one of those games, like, hell, if it's like, Jamaica and, England, I don't care. Like, I just want to go to one game for the World Cup just to see what it's like here in Houston for sure. I think, for me, like, my favorite football game I've ever been to, honestly, though, was Michael Vick and the Atlanta Falcons, Soldier Field, snowing, Monday Night Football, Brian Urlacher. Probably the coldest game I've ever been to in my life. It was freezing, but it was awesome. It was so much fun because Michael Vick was like my favorite player growing up, outside of anyone for the Bears.
Yeah.
So I love seeing him in person before the dog stuff happened.
Yeah, but I guess you can say like another one. I mean, maybe not sports related, but I like going to all these raves and these DJ events.
Really?
Man. When I tell you that crowd, like that's insane. Oh, I love it.
Interesting.
I love it. Yes,
I didn't have you pegged for that, Ruben.
Oh yeah. I love it, man. Just birthday was last weekend. We went to a rave in Stereo Life, Houston. DJ Blossom was out there. She was doing hardcore techno, hard dubstep, house music. It was a blast.
Yeah, I did not expect you for that one. You know what's funny? I'm not a big concert guy.
Really?
Yeah, you know what? Or I should say like festival.
Okay.
Like I'm not a big like have to like hold my bathroom break for 3 hours because I can't get there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why like I'm not a big festival guy. Just never really grew up on it, honestly. Too like my parents just like had like bad taste in music.
Yeah, for sure.
So like they didn't really like all my own music that I like now. Like had to like learn on my own. Didn't get anything musically from them. But yeah, but I get you. That's awesome though. Yeah, I mean going to big crowds and stuff. The A&M one was really what I was telling earlier to Sam here from Angry Elephant. Like when we left the game, and there's like 100,000 people leaving at the same time was crazy. That was a unenjoyable experience. That's the only thing I didn't like
nervous
about
when
it.
you're in a crowd like that?
I normally don't. I just don't love it. But like that one was crazy. But that one was just like everyone's going under this one bridge to walk to their cars, and the cops up there are just like they're doing their job. Like they're just letting cars through, but they're only letting like 10 people cross at a time. But then they're letting a bunch of cars go.
Yeah.
So we're all just kind of standing there, and like you're so far away, you just don't like really know what's happening in front of you.
You're just stuck.
And then like I was fine until like the people around me started to get upset. Like that's when I was starting to get nervous. I was like, I just remember looking at my dad and I was like, I was looking at this fence and I'm like, you think we can get over that thing? Because I was like, if this thing gets like out of control, I'm like, I do not want to be in this environment right now.
About some late college kids mad because they can't cross the street.
Yeah, exactly. Like and then people have been drinking all day long. Like it's gonna happen, but it's always fun.
I'm excited to go outside here and see who's partying out here.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's got to have already started, right? Like it's like everyone's got to be feeling it already. All right, he is Ruben. My name is Joe. You find us on Twitter at Joe George Radio at 713 HOU Sports. That's what it is, right?
HOU
okay.
Sports.
And 713 Houston Sports on YouTube for Ruben as well. When we get back, we'll play back the interview that Steve McKinney did with John and Dell from earlier this week as we are broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant. Thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
Joe and Ruben broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Thanks to everyone here for the hospitality today. Great food, great drinks as well. And especially our friends Rebecca Creek Distillery for sponsoring all of our coverage of A&M and Texas returning. So with that, we had a bunch of interviews on the station, which some of you can find on YouTube, some of them just on audio as well, like Brad Kellner, former, obviously, host from 3 to 7, joined us on Gallant George earlier this week. But one of my favorite interviews as well from this week was Steve McKinney. He joined John and Dell, and here he is first discussing his feelings leading up to the game and the return of this great rivalry.
You know, we've been looking forward to this game for a long time, obviously since 2011, but I can't even think of a time in my lifetime where this game had this much meaning on the line, you know, especially for A&M. I mean, for these two to be playing and renewing the rivalry in a game that actually has this much meaning, that where the winner's going to the SEC championship game, I mean, that's as big as it gets, you know, and to be a night game at Kyle Field, I mean, oh my goodness, that atmosphere is going to be literally insane. And there's been some insane atmospheres, and I got a feeling this is going to be the best one yet.
Did you sell your tickets for $3,000?
I wouldn't. They're priceless. My tickets are priceless. You couldn't pry them out of my cold, dead hands, John.
How about how much they're going for? This is ridiculous.
It is. It is. But I mean, you got to think about it, man. You got, 500,000 living alumni on both sides, both schools, and there's been 12 years of built up anticipation. I mean, there's no way these tickets were going to be top dollar, no matter what the records were.
Absolutely. Steve McKinney with us here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. What is your recollection of playing in this game?
Oh, I mean, I remember it from, before I even got to A&M, how important it was. But, being in it as a player, I mean, you couldn't help but kind of know that game was coming. It was always the last game of the year. So it wasn't like you went into the season working on UT or thinking about the game. But when you got close to it, when it started getting close to November, it became very difficult not to kind of look ahead a game or two, when you knew they were coming up on the schedule, because it's just so meaningful, no matter how the season had gone, you always felt like, just winning that game mattered more than any other game on your schedule.
Do you think maybe they were looking ahead, heading into the Auburn game?
John, you know as well as I do, buddy, going on the road in the SEC at night, especially in November. I mean, I think Ole Miss and Alabama, A&M, I mean, that's just proof how difficult that is. And that's exactly what Texas is about to walk into Saturday. So,
Steve,
I don't envy them.
Steve, we played sound from Mike Elko because he was asked a question about lack of holding calls against his defensive line or for his defensive line since September 21st. Can you remember a time, or has it ever happened that you were on an offensive line and you never got called for holding for 2 months? Is that ever a thing you remember happening?
I mean, it's a little ridiculous. I mean, I'm sitting there watching games, and there's always going to be some holds here and there on both sides. But when, you get a call for the other team, or two, and then you're going, okay, well, that's fine. That was a hold, but, call it both ways. And then you see holds that just get let go and don't get called. It gets a little frustrating. I mean, I've seen so many plays this year. I mean, I saw 2 or 3 in the South Carolina game last week that should have been called for holds, but they didn't. So it's like, okay, is there something going on? Like, why are they not calling holding calls? And it's pretty much impossible to go, 5, 6 straight SEC games without getting a holding call? Come on. I mean, what are we doing?
It's longer. It's incredible. Since September 21st, no holding calls against the opposing team. A team that's playing Texas A&M. It's ridiculous. Maybe all the refs are from Texas. Maybe they're all from UT. We don't know. You don't know.
There's plenty of conspiracy theories to go around, I'm sure. Hey,
sure.
Hey, they can make up for it this Saturday, John. Just make some calls up this Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay. Call 3 holdings on that future first round pick, Kelvin Banks. Get it done.
Yeah, Let's even it out.
Yeah. What do you think of Elko so far?
I really like him. I think Elko's done a nice job. I mean, he's definitely changed the culture around there. You can't deny that. I mean, that team. You look at what they've lost this year. They've lost their top 2 running backs. They've been playing with probably without their best lineman for the last 4 weeks. They just next man up mentality, man. That team has a lot of grit. They have a lot of fight. I think Marcel Reed has just been electric, especially at times. I think defensively we got to play better against the run. We got to do a better job of containing the quarterback. And I think this week, sets up pretty nicely for them. They've struggled a little bit with running quarterbacks, but overall, I really love the team. I love the mentality of them. They fight from start to finish. I don't think anybody expected them to be in this situation really. And yet here they are with a really legitimate shot of playing in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, that was my question about your impression of this team, because Mike Elko, some people thought it was a shot at Jimbo. We don't have fast talkers around here. We're a program, stuff like that. Is it pretty noticeable the difference in how things are done there from last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's and I was a big fan of Jimbo. Okay, I'll just say that I liked Jimbo. I thought he was a good coach. I think things got a little haywire there at the end, and maybe there were some opportunities and disciplinarian actions, but as far as what Elko's done, I mean, I can definitely see the difference. I mean, I think he's authentic. I think he's a genuine dude. I think what you see is what you get. I think the players really respond well to him. They know what's expected. He demands, a high standard, and he holds them to that standard. And I think that's what you're seeing is just, a team that's just really come together. They did a nice job in the portal. They brought in guys with that right mentality, not divas and, guys that were just there to pick up a paycheck. I think they were looking for the type of players that were going to come in there and help change the culture. And it definitely feels like that happened.
Steve McKinney with us here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Distilleries, Rebecca Creek Whiskey, Enchanted Rock Vodka, Texas Ranger Whiskey, celebrating the return of the rivalry, the first time since 2011. Gig 'em and hook 'em. We're going to have Selvin Young joining us a little bit later in the show to talk about. You mentioned Marcel Reed. A tough call, with doing what he has done, especially in this, this era of NIL and portal and everything else. But Marcel Reed has been the right call. At any point, do you expect him to go back though? If Marcel struggles?
I don't think so, man. I think we're locked in. I think we've reached that point of no return now. So, I mean, it's his team. It's his game to win and his game to lose. So we're riding it all the way with Marcel. And I think he showed that he can be that guy. I think he'll only get better too. I mean, he's a guy that I think is an off season away from being a really, really big time player. So, but he's already shown major flashes of it. I mean, you've seen he can run the ball. He's shown that he does a great job on the zone reads, taking advantage of that when they give it to him. And now you're starting to see him throw the ball well. I mean, he's thrown for over 300 yards the last 2 games. His accuracy's improved. He's very comfortable in the pocket. So, I like what I'm seeing from him. I mean, you see the kid just kind of growing up before your eyes and developing and becoming that leader and the dynamic player that we need him to be. So, I love a lot of what I'm seeing with Marcel Reed right now.
Yeah, when Wegman was struggling against LSU, he didn't hesitate to put Marcel in. But when Auburn came out and jumped out big, he didn't put Wegman in. That's and he believed, and sure enough, Marcel brought him back, and that was a hell of a game that game last week, and maybe took a lot out of him. What do they have to do you watch Texas this year? And what you watch all of A&M's games? What do they have to do to beat Texas?
Man, I mean, it's going to be one of those games. I mean, Texas is a good football team. They got a lot of talent. They got a lot of speed at receiver. Probably be our most challenging receiving passing game to contain. We're banged up, man. We're struggling at cornerback. We had some injuries, and guys are beat up a little bit, and I'm sure that's on both sides of the ball. But this is one of those games where you're going to have to depend on your front four to put some pressure on the quarterback, because you're not going to be able to leave these cornerbacks on islands with all the speed they have at receiver. So you're going to have to keep some safeties back at times and depend on your front four, and maybe bringing a linebacker at times to get pressure on the quarterback and move them off the spot. So that's what to me is going to be the key to slowing down their offense. Of course, we got to stop the running game. I mean, I think they have a really good offensive line. I think they're well coached. They got good players. They've lost their top running back as well at the beginning of the season, but Blue's been doing a nice job carrying the load, and we got to keep the running game in contain and force the quarterback to throw under pressure, because if you give him time to sit back there, he'll pick you apart, and that's not going to be good.
Yep.
And then on offense, I think the key is that we got to run the ball, period. We have to be able to establish a running game. We got to be getting over 4.5 yards a carry. And, I think they do that, they win this game.
All right, so that was our final interview for the day. All of that brought to you by Rebecca Creek Distillery, our coverage of Texas A&M and Texas, and the return of this great rivalry in college football. So Steve McKinney, Selvin Young, Andrew Monaco, Craig Way, thanks to all of them for joining the station this week. Brad Kellner as well. All that's available on YouTube if you missed any of it on the show today, as we replayed that for some of you guys. So you can always check that out before the game tomorrow. So it's Ruben and Joe. We got one more segment here, broadcasting live from inside the Angry Elephant in College Station.
You're listening to our Texas A&M versus Texas preview show, brought to you by Rebecca Creek Whiskey, broadcasting live from the Angry Elephant in College Station. Here's Joe George.
All right, got about 6 minutes left to go in the show today. First of all, want to give some shout-outs here. Everybody here from Rebecca Creek Distillery. There was a bunch of people here from the company we got to meet before the show today. Sam, the Director of Operations here at the Angry Elephant. Thank you to all of them for helping put this together, for the great work this week, providing coverage and sponsoring coverage of Texas A&M versus Texas on the station. It was really fun to partner with Rebecca Creek Distillery, and shout out to David Nuno of Texags for coming out here. And obviously he lives in College Station now, so not a far drive for coming out and doing 2 segments with us. Thank you, Ruben, for coming out as well. Appreciate you, man.
So much, man. It was a blessing. It was an honor, and I cannot wait to do this again.
Yeah, well, definitely will be for sure. I was just thinking about, in my head there for a little bit during that last break because we were talking about all the holidays people will be taking up. So we'll definitely be doing this again very soon again, I'm sure. So anything left over from the Texans that we didn't get to today that you feel like you wanted to hit on, or?
Nah, man, we've been, talking about the same stuff. We've been talking about the past, 2 months, a horrible second half offense and an opportunity to get it fixed before you got to go through 3 really good teams in 10 days. The only question is, will they get it done or not? We have to see. But I always say, as long as you have D'Amico, as long as you got CJ, you got a chance, man. Just hopefully they believe that themselves. They believe that they are a good football team.
I just saw this from someone asked Texans Cap, who I think does great work on Twitter, about Stephon Diggs next offseason. You think he comes back?
I think he wants to come back. I think the money has to make sense.
Yeah.
The money definitely has to make sense. He was a bright presence for us, and I always tell people that I feel like the trade was working out until the ACL tear.
I totally agree.
At training camp, he was working with guys before and after practice, guys who didn't even make the 53-man roster. He was working out with them, and you saw his presence on the sideline during games. You saw it throughout the year, and I mean, dare I say, right? We saw a change in this Houston Texans offense's attitude with the absence of Stephon Diggs. We don't have that veteran, that leader.
Yeah, I mean, and you think about like the questions about Diggs, right? Of being a good teammate and the way that things ended in Minnesota and Buffalo, and he comes here, and it's like, well, we all knew he was going to be on his best behavior in year 1. Well, how's it going to look in year 2? Well, he got hurt, so you could think it's going to be just as good as it was in year 1. And one of the things that Texans Cap said was that before March 3rd, is when the Texans would have to sign Stephon Diggs to be able to rework some of the money that they moved around. Because don't forget, Stephon Diggs has a $16.5 million cap hit next season for the Houston Texans because they moved everything up, and it's $4 million in 2026, 27, and 28. So he's going to count against your salary cap the next 4 years. If there's a way to get him to count against your salary cap next year where he's actually on the football team as well versus somewhere else, like that would be a huge win for me. Like I hate the idea of not having $16 million to spend for the Texans because Stephon Diggs is, a New York Jet or something like that.
So you think it's a must to bring him back?
Not a must, but I would prefer it.
High on the list.
Yeah, I think, maybe the only thing that can talk me out of it, and maybe we're headed down that path. We did not mention his name once today. That's no disrespect to him. But what we've seen from John Mechie since the Lions game, really positive.
Yeah.
Like, really feel like it's like, oh, okay. Like, they're figuring out how to get him involved in the offense. And now I do feel like a world where Stephon Diggs is not back. You're not drafting another wide receiver. You're not paying another wide receiver. Like, that actually does make sense potentially for the Texans of, John Mechie with Tank Dell and Nico Collins which is good because I loved him coming out of college. We knew what the injury was. Obviously, unfortunately, he had to battle cancer. But it's been my favorite story of the season so far. Is John Mechie for sure.
Yeah, I'm either way. I would love if Stephon Diggs returned. I would understand if he didn't return based on how the money worked out. You bring up John Mechie. He's making a case for himself as a number 3, number 4 option for this Houston Texan offense, and he's about to be in contract year next season. So, however, that won't cost you a lot due to how little we've seen John Mechie on the field. But I am fine either way. You bring up a great point, seeing that that $16 million potentially elsewhere.
Yeah.
Next year kind of does make me feel some type of way. I'm more than happy with bringing Stephon Diggs back. Imagine those four guys with a different play caller, right? How dangerous can this offense be?
Yeah, it's not like ACLs are a thing of concern anymore either. Like
Not no more.
Yeah, we see guys; they're all fine. Like I mean, it's weird that like we're younger. I know you're younger than me. You pointed that out earlier. But like when we were, when AP got hurt, when Adrian Peterson got hurt, and he tore his ACL, and everyone was like, what's going on? Like he's done, but then he was great. Like it's no issue, like no problem at all. And then you get past that, and it's like, well, since then when he returned, the whole NFL has figured it out, and just made it work for ACL. So that's a non-concern for me at all for this.
No.
Sure.
It's just going to come down to, does the money make sense? Is Stephon Diggs going to understand his role once he gets here, which he understood it, this year? Maybe you're not the number one option, but you are a reliable number two. And when Nico Collins was out, Stephon Diggs did step up, and in 3 out of the 4 games, he was the team's leading wide receiver.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
There were a lot of bright moments with Stephon Diggs here. There weren't those all-pro Stephon Diggs moments, but we knew that was a possibility.
Yeah, but and they didn't use him deep. Like he was more like the really short guy to try to get the easy stuff for CJ, which was a little bit more of that than what I expected. But they are missing that now that they don't have him out there anymore. All right, that is going to do it for us. AJ, I'm going to coach you here on the fly here. So if the mouse is broken, when I go to break, you'll just pot up ESPN National. On the ESPN XDS there. All right, so that will do it for us here from the Angry Elephant, broadcasting live. Thanks to our friends at Rebecca Creek Distillery. Once again, everyone here has been incredible. Rebecca Creek Distillery, highly recommend. We took some shots of it earlier. It was very, very good. Ruben, thank you again for joining me today out here in College Station. A little 2-hour hike for us. So that will do it for us today. I'll be back on Monday from noon to 3 with Gallant George. And don't forget, Texas A&M versus Texas, you can hear right here on ESPN 97.5 pregame show starting at 5:30 tomorrow. That will do it for us. Peace.
College football teams have moments they recovered from and made it like it never even happened. For instance, TCU walked into the locker room at halftime in the 2016 Alamo Bowl, down 31-0. The Horned Frogs stormed into the second half and erased a 31-point deficit to force overtime, and eventually won it in the